Hey guys, tonight, we wander beneath starlight, older than sorrow, where peace comes slowly, but always comes. You're not in your bed anymore, not really. You've been gently carried into a softer realm, one made of slow winds, warm shadows, and a night so still, even your worries tiptoe. You're not alone here, but nothing crowds you. The air smells like ancient lavender and campfire wood, and the ground has just enough give to remind you the universe wasn't built for rushing. This place is sacred, but not the loud stained glass kind. It's sacred like old quilts, warm bread, and stories told by someone who already forgave you before you spoke. You find yourself walking under a canopy of trees that seem to remember Eden. Their leaves rustle, not with urgency, but with kindness. The stars above, oh, the stars glow like wise, unblinking eyes. They don't flash, they don't scream. They simply are, and that's more than enough. Unless you've got wings, or your soul already signed the guest book at the pearly gates, you might joke, but here that doesn't sound strange. In fact, it might be a compliment. Even the trees seem to smile when you speak. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I mean that. If you're awake enough, drop your location and the current time in the comments. I love seeing where this little circle of peace stretches what cities, what stars, what hearts. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The path before you shimmers faintly, not from light, but from memory. The night here feels held, like God paused his breath just long enough for you to arrive. You don't hear thunder, or choirs, or even angel wings, just something deeper. A quiet, a presence, like someone you love already arrived ahead of you and warmed the place up. A soft wind nudges your cheek, not pushy, just present. It carries with it the echo of a name you've forgotten was yours. Not your earthly name, the one people mispronounce. This is the name you'll be called when God wants to make you tea, or ask how your soul's been holding up lately. This is the kind of night where time doesn't tick. It stretches sighs and sits beside you like a loyal dog who doesn't need to be pet, just near. And somewhere, yes, just ahead, there's a flicker of warmth that isn't moonlight. But we'll get there. For now, just walk. Slowly. Like God is watching and smiling at the way you finally stopped hurrying. You step gently and the path beneath your feet changes, no longer forest soil, but something softer, smoother, woven almost. It's as if the earth itself has knit a welcome mat, one you couldn't find on any map. This is a garden untouched by cartographers and tourists, a place whispered about in the dreams of saints and the pauses between psalms. The trees thin out, and you see it, an orchard wide as breath, glowing faintly with colors that defy the crayon box, blushes of gold, deep sighing greens and blues that seem to remember the sea but don't miss it. There are no gates, no guards, no signs, but you know. This place was planted not for the world to find, but for the weary to stumble into. You take a few steps and hear the hum of something old, not machinery or music, but life itself. The hum of a garden that remembers how to breathe even when you forget. This isn't Eden, not quite. Eden was the beginning. This is the mercy afterward. Fruit hangs heavy on bowed branches, figs, pomegranates, something glowing and round like a star that got too close to the sun. You don't reach out yet, you're just taking it in. The trees do not beckon, but they're glad you came. If they had hands, they'd cup your cheeks and say, "It's been too long." Some scholars once debated whether the Garden of Eden had a twin. A second place hidden, held back, planted not for innocence, but for healing. A sanctuary for after the fall. They never found evidence, of course, but who needs scrolls? When your soul recognizes soil, Jesus is not here yet, but you sense him nearby. Like the way you can smell bread in a neighbor's house and feel full just knowing someone's baking. His nearness tingles in the breeze and rests on your shoulders like a gentle robe. Maybe he's waiting behind one of these trees, or maybe he's letting you remember how to walk without panic. As you move through the orchard, you notice a vine twisted around a small arch of stone. It looks like it was once part of a gate, now broken, surrendered to growth. Some gates don't open, they dissolve. There's no sound of birds yet, nothing feels empty. Silence here is not absence, it's invitation. Like a book open to the page you didn't know you needed. You pause by a tree with soft white blossoms. Each petal falls in slow, sacred rhythm. You don't know the tree's name, and that's okay. Not everything needs labeling. Some things just are. You chuckle because, of course, the one time you forget your phone, you walk into a secret biblical orchard. Typical. But maybe that's the point. No camera could capture the hush. No selfie could frame this moment without reducing it. You inhale. You don't rush. The orchard waits for no one, and it's waited for everyone. The air shifts, not colder, not warmer, just closer. As if the garden has leaned in a little, curious about you. You continue down a meandering lane where the trees grow deeper in hue, their trunks twisted like aged scrolls, their roots exposed like sentences yearning to be read aloud. And then you see it. A single fig tree, small but unbent, growing in the exact middle of a clearing, kissed by moonlight. Its branches hang low, not from weight, but intention. One branch especially dips toward your eye level, as if it's bowing just for you. You pause, wondering if this is coincidence or choreography. Jesus once spoke of a fig tree, remember? Not the one he cursed for its barrenness. This one is different. This one feels like it's been rehearsing your arrival. The branch quivers ever so slightly, not from wind but recognition. You approach slowly. The bark feels like scripture, textured, ancient, warm to the touch. A single fig dangles from that low branch, impossibly ripe. You reach for it, half expecting it to vanish, like something in a dream. But no, it stays. It's been waiting. In the Talmud, there's a quiet debate. Was the fruit in Eden really an apple, or was it a fig, the only tree named by name in the covering of shame? Some say the fig holds a special place because it knew how to heal even as it witnessed the fall. You wonder what kind of tree waits for centuries just to offer one piece of fruit to one soul on one wandering night. You pick it. The fig feels alive in your palm, pulsing slightly, like it remembers sunlight from another world. You take a bite. Warm, sweet, faintly spiced, like cinnamon prayed over, like honey that once belonged to prophecy. Your eyes flutter shut, not from tiredness, but from awe. Suddenly you remember every meal in scripture that happened under a tree. Abraham's angels, Elijah's depression, Zacchaeus up high, Nathaniel's questioning. And then your thoughts hush, because someone else is here. A sound, soft sandal on moss. You turn. Jesus stands just outside the ring of moonlight, arms loose at his sides. No grandeur, no thrones, just presence. He nods toward the fig tree, smiling. "That one's yours," he says. Has been for a long time. You laugh nervous, amazed, not knowing why. He grins wider. Took you long enough. And there it is, that strange, sacred truth. Sometimes peace waits like a branch, quietly bowed, never in a rush, just waiting for you to see it. Jesus doesn't speak again, not yet. Instead, he slips behind a tall, thin cypress tree, the kind that always seems to point upward, as if it's tattling on earth to heaven. You follow because what else would you do? The fig lingers sweet on your tongue, like truth that didn't scold but fed. The garden feels different now, not darker, just deeper. Each tree you pass seems older than the last, like they've been through things, plagues, floods, awkward temple dances. Their bark bears lines like forehead creases from laughing too much or praying too hard. Then it happens. From behind the cypress you hear him hum. It's not a tune you know, yet it tugs at your memory like a thread left loose in your soul's sweater. Low and slow, the sound curls around you like sandalwood smoke. No words, just tone. Some believe Jesus sang only once after the Last Supper before Gethsemane. They sang a hymn, the Gospels say. But which one? Scholars guess Psalm 118, maybe 136. But maybe, just maybe, this was it. This hum, this hymn with no lyrics. One reserved for those too tired for words. You round the tree expecting to see him, but he's not there. Just an empty bench, weathered stone with an indentation, as though someone sat there often. You sit. Of course you do. The air smells of olives and old rain. You close your eyes, letting his voice, wherever it's coming from, wrap around your thoughts like a lullaby sewn with mystery thread. You're not even trying to make sense of anything anymore. That feels like last week's job. Tonight isn't about answers. It's about letting questions stretch their legs and take a slow walk with God. Behind you, the cypress leans just slightly. It didn't a moment ago. You're sure of it. But now it curves toward you like it's trying to eavesdrop on holiness. You think of all the times you prayed for loud answers, clashing thunder, writing on the wall doves that delivered dissertations. But here, peace tiptoes, comfort hums, and Jesus hides not to distance you, but to help you draw near. You chuckle. I feel like I'm being followed by serenity. And somewhere behind the trees, you hear him laugh soft, like velvet tearing in heaven. He's close. He never really left. But he wants you to come looking. You stand again, drawn by the sound of pages that aren't turning, just rustling quietly, as if they want to be read. Ahead, nestled between two low olive trees, you see him sitting cross-legged on the ground, an open scroll resting on his lap. But the parchment is blank, not a word, not a single stroke of ink. And yet, it sings. He looks up at you, not startled, just softly, amused, like he's been expecting your curiosity since the stars first practiced twinkling. You've heard the Psalms, he says, brushing a breeze off the scroll, but some never made it into the book. Some were too personal, too quiet, meant only for nights like this. He gestures for you to sit beside him. The grass here bends like old friends scooting over on a pew. You settle in. He lets the scroll lie open between you. No words appear, but somehow you feel the verses. Not in your ears, in your breathing. One psalm feels like what David might have whispered into his sleeve the night he realized Saul had stopped chasing him. Another feels like what Mary might have hummed in Aramaic while folding Jesus' childhood clothes so gently, so full of future. There's one that aches with Peter's half-spoken regret after the rooster crowed. and another that pulses with something Enoch may have heard in the air just before he disappeared, something between terror and ecstasy. These aren't lost, Jesus says, eyes fixed on the scroll, just still unfolding. He touches a part of the page, and your heart flutters. A psalm about you. Not who you try to be, or who you're afraid you've become, but the you heaven remembers on purpose. It doesn't rhyme, it doesn't preach. It just knows. There's a line felt not read that says, "Blessed is the one who didn't leave the garden when no one else showed up." You blink. Yeah, that hits a little too real. Jesus tilts his head. Some people sing to be heard, but some psalms, they're sung just so the trees and angels don't forget how fragile humans can be. You laugh under your breath. You ever forget a verse? He grins. All the time. That's why I keep writing new ones. The scroll rolls itself up as gently as a sigh. He hands it to you. You don't have to read it, he says. Just carry it. Peace likes knowing it has somewhere to live. You tuck it beneath your arm, surprised at how light it feels. Not empty, just eager, like a lullaby still waiting for the right note. You look up again. The stars haven't moved, not even a little. It's as though time put its sandals down and decided to nap beside the fig tree. You think maybe your eyes are playing tricks on you, but then again, maybe the stars are just playing reverence. Jesus follows your gaze. Beautiful, right? You nod slowly. There's something different about them tonight. They're not cold or glittery or distant. They seem present, as if they're not just lights, but listeners. In the beginning, he murmurs they didn't race across the sky like they do now. They used to linger, just like this. You wonder if he's joking. He isn't. He reaches up, tracing one slow-moving constellation, with his finger not pointing more, like introducing you to an old friend. That one, he says, never wanted to leave Eden. So God gave it a slower orbit. You squint, then smile. The stars aren't just shining, they're waiting. Waiting for what? Maybe for you to stop measuring everything in minutes. Some rabbinic tales, not the ones you hear in Sunday school, but the good, crumbly ones buried in commentaries, suggest that when the Israelites wandered the desert, the stars dimmed their pace at night. Not for dramatic effect, but so no traveler would feel left behind. You reach out your hand, unsure why, just wanting to feel the sky somehow. Jesus laughs softly. They like you, he says. They don't hurry for people they don't trust. You raise an eyebrow, so they're snobs. No, he says, just wise. One star blinks, not twinkles, blinks, like it got the joke. You lie down the grass, bending underneath like it knows you need a soft place to stretch your doubt. Jesus lies down too, just a few feet away. No urgency, no sermon, just the rustle of night robes and the exhale of a world not rushing. You think about the things you've tried to hurry. Healing, forgiveness, answers, peace. They never liked being rushed. Like soup that burns your tongue when you don't wait, or bread that caves in because someone couldn't leave it alone long enough to rise. I think I've spent my life trying to beat the clock, you whisper. He doesn't answer immediately. The pause is the answer. Then even the stars take their time getting home. And suddenly, you believe it. Maybe peace isn't late. Maybe it just refuses to be early when your soul's not ready yet. You sit up slowly, watching the sky keep still, while your thoughts, those usual overcooked noodles, begin to soften. Loosen, stretch into something gentler. Jesus is still reclined, arms behind his head, smiling at nothing in particular. The garden hums. You turn to him. Do you ever wish you'd hurried things? He snorts gently. Only once. And even then I was wrong. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. The night presses in not heavily, but like a favorite blanket pulled up under your chin. You feel safe here. Suspended. Unhurried. Did God always use time, you ask? Like we do, Jesus' eyes shimmer. Not exactly. Time used to breathe differently. He sits up now cross-legged again, brushing a few errant leaves off his robes as though they've been clinging since Mount Tabor. At first there was only now, but later was born when mercy needed room to grow. You blink. So, God invented waiting, in a way. Imagine if grace arrived too soon, before the wound even opened. It would miss its mark. That's why some blessings are wrapped in silence. They ripen slowly like olives. You nod, trying to hold on to that. But your brain starts doing that thing where it wants to organize theology into neat boxes again. Jesus sees it. Stop that. Stop what that forehead thing. The squint of religious anxiety. You laugh and lie back down. He grins, satisfied. You're not here to figure me out. You're here to feel me near. Somewhere behind you, a branch creaks like it's stretched in its sleep. The wind stirs the grass. You think of the parable of the 10 virgins waiting with their lamps, and how 5 of them ran out of oil. You always felt bad for them. Burnout is real. But maybe the point wasn't about preparation. Maybe it was about patience. There's a little-known midrash that suggests God waited 3 full breaths before speaking creation into motion. Just sat there, in the void, breathing, because even omnipotence honors the art of pause. Jesus looks at you sideways. You ever notice how no one rushes a sunset? Except tourists, you reply. He laughs a real laugh. Throat and chest, the kind that probably startled the angels the first time he did it. Then quieter peace doesn't respond to clocks. It responds to trust. You close your eyes again, not because you're tired, but because you finally feel allowed to. And somewhere in the stars above, you swear you hear one whisper. Later isn't a delay. It's a promise with good posture. A hush falls again. Not awkward silence, consecrated silence. The kind that makes your breath slow down without asking. The garden leans in. Jesus closes his eyes. You follow suit. And in the quiet, something descends. Not loudly, not with trumpet fanfare. Just a soft drift. You open your eyes and see it, a single feather, weightless and white, slowly spiraling from above. It catches the moonlight like it borrowed it for a moment, then floats down and lands on a nearby rock with the elegance of a prayer that doesn't need grammar. You both watch it. That from an angel, you ask, half joking, half hoping. Maybe Jesus says, or maybe it's just how the garden sneezes. You laugh, but then you notice this feather doesn't look ordinary. It hums faintly. Not in sound, but presence. It's old. It's seen things. Like it once drifted through the tree of life itself and never forgot the fragrance. Some say Jesus begins that when Eden was closed, one feather slipped through the boundary. Not on purpose, not by defiance. It just floated wrong. You raise an eyebrow. The angels argued about it. He continues, whether to retrieve it, whether it broke protocol. But God said, leave it. It will find someone who needs a reminder. And that someone is me, you ask. Jesus just shrugs, but he doesn't deny it. In ancient apocryphal texts, there's obscure mention of the falling purity. A feather that outlived the garden, resting wherever the world grows weary. Some say it appears once every few hundred years, beside a soul God particularly misses. You glance at the feather again. It hasn't moved, neither has your heart. It's finally still. Jesus reaches over and picks it up between two fingers. Want it? You hesitate. Is it allowed? Everything good is allowed, he says. He hands it to you. It's warmer than you expect, and impossibly soft, like it's made of sleep and Sabbath and lullabies sung by grandmothers who never got old. You tuck it into your pocket. You don't know why, but it feels like carrying a verse that hasn't been written yet. Jesus leans back on his elbows and smiles. Now if a halo falls next, we're in real trouble. The garden chuckles with you. Above a leaf flutters down jealous. But it's okay. Tonight everything that falls does so gently. The path curls again softly to the left, leading you toward a grove that smells faintly of cedar smoke and stories no one writes down. The trees grow closer here, not menacing, just companionable, like elders drawing their chairs around you to listen. Ahead, you see it, a stone bench, half mossed, half sunlit by whatever holy moonlight trickles through the canopy. Draped over it is a worn, patchy blanket, the color of desert dusk, burnt orange, faded red, and a fringe that looks like it's been twirled by centuries of fingers. Jesus says nothing as you approach. He just watches you notice. You reach out and touch it. It's soft, softer than it looks, softer than logic. It smells like wilderness and warm rain and something else you can't name, but remember anyway. Peace. No. Older than peace. Permission to rest, maybe. Elijah's Jesus says simply. You blink, as in, yes, that Elijah. You let out a low whistle. Didn't know prophets had throw blankets. Oh, he didn't throw it. Jesus smirks. He clung to it. He sits beside you. This is the one he wrapped around his face when the whisper came. Not the fire, not the quake, not the wind, the whisper. You look at the blanket again. Suddenly it feels heavier with history. Elijah, exhausted, curled in a cave, unsure if he wanted to keep going, and this blanket held him. Or rather, let him be held. A lesser-known scroll from the Dead Sea Caves hints that Elijah's mantle wasn't only a prophet's badge, it was a comfort object. Tucked under it were tiny symbols, stitched by a friend. A widow he once helped each one, a promise he forgot when fear spoke louder than faith. You let your fingers find one of the stitches. It's shaped like a tiny fish. You chuckle. I thought this was Old Testament. Jesus grins. Even back then, fish meant survival. You don't wrap the blanket around yourself. You don't need to. Just being near it changes your breathing. It's as if it absorbs anxiety from the air, like holy charcoal. Why is it here, you ask? I bring it out, he says, when someone thinks they're too tired to be useful. You look at him. He's not teasing, not pushing. Elijah wanted to quit. He adds, so I let him nap, then fed him, then let him nap again. You laugh. That sounds familiar. Jesus nods. Naps are sacred when God is in the rhythm. You let that sink in. You lean back on the bench, close your eyes, and somewhere deep in the branches above a dove sighs. Or maybe it's just the blanket remembering a prophet's tears. Tonight, you don't need to carry fire. You just need to sit beside the ones who once did and dared to rest. Your stomach rumbles not loudly, just enough to remind you you're still human in all the gentle, hungry ways. Jesus doesn't react, but he does reach into a nearby basket you swear wasn't there a moment ago. He pulls out a small round cake, sun-colored, and lightly dusted with something that glows faintly, like crushed stars. Try it, he says, handing it to you with both palms open. You hesitate. Is it? He nods. Manna. Well, not the manna, but it remembers. You take a bite. It tastes like soft honey and silence. Like the kind of bread you'd eat in a dream if your dreams were made in heaven's kitchen. Warm without heat, sweet without sugar. It melts, and with it something inside you unclenches. Jesus watches you eat, then breaks off a piece for himself. You know they never really liked it. You blink. Who the wilderness crowd? They got tired of it, called it miserable food. He says it with a grin, but the sadness underneath lingers like a chord unresolved. You chew slowly. Why give them something they'd resent? Because it was enough, he says. And enough rarely feels exciting. You sit with that. A breeze moves past, not cold, just wise. It smells like toasted grain and desert mornings. There's an obscure Hebrew tale, one not often told outside quiet libraries, that suggests manna wasn't just provision. It was memory. That it tasted different to each person, evoking what their soul needed most. For some, it tasted like their mother's cooking. For others, it reminded them of meals never had, but still longed for. You wonder what yours tastes like. You can't name it, but it feels like something from before anxiety, before striving, maybe even before birth. Maybe peace has flavor, and this is it. Jesus picks at a crumb stuck to his robe. You ever notice how I never taught them to harvest manna, just to gather it? You hadn't. But now it seems profound. Harvesting is control. Gathering is trust. And always, he says, just enough for the day. No leftovers. Except the double portion before Sabbath, you recall. He beams. Exactly. God doesn't forget naps or meals. You chuckle. So you're saying rest and snacks are sacred? I'm saying they're the same thing if you do it right. You lean back, hands dusted with flour and grace. Somewhere nearby, the grass leans into your shoulder like it wants a taste too. Jesus reaches into the basket again. Seconds, you nod. Even manna has room for more when it's handed with love. The second piece of manna settles in your belly, like it's tucking you in from the inside. You're full, but not heavy. Awake, but not urgent. It's a sacred kind of in-between, like twilight, refusing to become either day or night. You glance at Jesus, expecting him to say something wise or weird, or both, but he just sits there, quiet, content, waiting. And it hits you, even he waits. You'd always imagined him moving, teaching healing, flipping tables, or walking through walls. But here he is, still as moss, still as mercy, just waiting. You break the silence. What do you wait for? He smiles, that half smile that says more than a sermon. For you to believe I'm not going anywhere. You try to laugh it off, but your chest tightens a little. Somewhere deep, a part of you is still braced for abandonment. That part shifts slightly under his gaze. There was a day, he continues, by the Sea of Galilee. Crowds were gone. Disciples were off arguing about bread again. And I just sat there all day. You tilt your head. Why I needed silence to stitch my thoughts together, he says. Even the sun needs solitude. You think of all the times you mistook God's quiet for absence. Maybe you were wrong. There's a verse rarely quoted, almost shy, where Isaiah says, "Therefore the Lord waits to be gracious to you." Not forces, not rushes, waits. Some apocryphal writings claim that Jesus once spent 40 nights alone before his ministry began, not fasting, just watching stars ripple over Galilee. He didn't speak, he didn't teach, he just existed. slowly. A god learning the rhythm of manhood. You don't seem in a hurry, you say? He chuckles. What would I rush toward? You're already here. That answer undoes something in you. It's like finding out the train you've been sprinting after has been standing at the platform this whole time, gently honking and wondering if you needed a snack. I thought holiness was about striving, you whisper. Holiness is about being held, he replies, and sometimes about waiting long enough to know the difference. You lie back again, letting the words wash over you like oil warmed on a Sabbath stove. The sky above doesn't darken, it deepens. Stars blink slower now, as if they're listening too. Somewhere a cricket begins a lullaby for no one in particular, or maybe just for you. You glance sideways. Jesus is still there. No rush, no pressure, just presence. And that is enough. The garden path continues not straight, but wandering like it doesn't care where it ends. You walk slowly, savoring how the silence here carries more wisdom than your busiest thoughts ever did. Each step presses into soft soil, sprinkled with smooth pebbles, worn down, not by water, but by time that knew how to wait. You look down. One of them catches your eye. Tiny, round, pinkish gray with a pale line etched across its middle, like a smile someone tried to hide. You kneel to pick it up. It's warm, not sun warm, but presence warm, like it's been held before. Often, Jesus comes beside you, kneels too. That one, he says, that one remembers tears. You blink. Who's all of them, he whispers. Pebbles make good listeners. You raise your eyebrow, waiting for a deeper point. They don't interrupt. He adds deadpan. Unlike Peter. You snort. There's a half-forgotten tradition rarely mentioned, but lovingly kept by desert mystics, that the stones which lined ancient wilderness paths absorb the prayers of travelers, especially the silent ones. Prayers muttered through clenched jaws, prayers lost in sobs, the ones no scribe could record. Some believe that's why the rocks cried out when Jesus entered Jerusalem, not because of prophecy alone, but because they'd heard enough longing to finally burst. You crouch lower, listening now, not just looking. There's a murmur, faint like a memory trying to hum itself into existence. The pebbles here do pray, not in sentences, in vibrations, little pulses of remembered hope, regret, courage. Jesus picks one up and puts it to his ear like a seashell. This one's from Hannah, he says. Still sings lullabies. You pick up another. It smells faintly of incense and sea wind. Maybe from Jonah, or someone else who ran, circled back, and got caught by grace anyway. Why are they here, you ask? To remind you, Jesus says that nothing unspoken goes unnoticed. You hold your stone tightly, suddenly aware of how many unsaid things live inside you. Fears you never named, dreams you buried because hope was too heavy. Sins you forgave in others, but never gave yourself permission to outgrow. Do they ever answer, you ask? He smiles. They do more than that. Sometimes they hold space when you can't. You place your pebble back down carefully, like returning a scroll to its shelf. And the ground sighs just a little. One pebble shifts on its own and rolls to the center of the path. Look, Jesus says. That one's got something for you. You pick it up. On its underside is a single scratch, almost accidental, but when the light hits just right, it looks like a crown. Your breath catches. Not all thorns pierce. He murmurs, and suddenly the path ahead doesn't feel as uncertain. It feels prayed over. You continue down the path, fingers still curled, gently around the pebble with its quiet crown. The trees thin again, giving way to a wide open sky, a celestial canvas brushed with indigo and softened gold, like twilight blushing in reverence. You lie down without deciding to. The grass welcomes you cool and slow breathing. Jesus lies beside you again, not close enough to crowd, but near enough that his presence hums through the ground like harp strings. Above the stars wait, not shine, wait, patient, unbothered. You get the sense they've been watching longer than prophets and outlasting even your most persistent insomnia. They know you're tired. Jesus says, his voice softer now, like it's been filtered through sandalwood and lullabies. Tired of what you ask, although your soul already knows. The striving, the second guessing, the way you try to earn what's already yours. You inhale. The stars seem to exhale in return. There's an old belief buried in a Babylonian commentary that each soul is assigned a star not as ownership, but as companionship. A star that watches from your first cry to your final sigh. Not to judge, just to remember the parts of you even you forget. You've been seen, he whispers, since the beginning. One star pulses slightly just once, like a wink. You squint up, half expecting it to spell your name in Morse code. Instead, it simply stays still, as if to say, you don't have to do anything for me to stay. Jesus rolls onto his side, resting on an elbow, face turned toward you. Do you know what makes them holy? You shake your head. They never compete, he says. They don't rush. They don't outshine each other. They just show up. You chuckle lightly. That's it. That's everything, he replies. You close your eyes for a beat, feeling the weight of that. Not heavy, just true. Like a wool blanket finally pulled over your anxious thoughts. Some days you admit, I don't know how to keep going. I know, he says without sadness, just honesty. Some days I fake peace better than I feel it. He reaches out and taps your chest right above your heartbeat. But this part knows. It always knows. Another star flickers, casting the faintest halo over your shoulder. You turn your head and see it, a cluster of lights, shaped just vaguely like an open hand. Do they really see me, you ask, quieter now. They never stopped, he answers. Even when you stopped looking up, you both fall silent. Not the kind that isolates, the kind that cuddles. Wraps, rocking chair silence. Above you, the stars remain unhurrying, undemanding, unafraid, like old friends who show up at 2 a.m., not to fix, just to stay. The stars hold their post as you lie still, the kind of stillness that doesn't ask anything of you except honesty. Not the loud kind, the soft kind, the kind that says, you don't have to pretend right now. Jesus hasn't spoken in a while, and that somehow says more than anything else tonight. You roll your head toward him. His eyes are closed. He isn't asleep, but he is deeply present in that way only someone who knows eternity can be. You hesitate, then ask, are you waiting for me to speak? He opens one eye and smiles. No, just letting silence do its job. There's a hush that follows, not emptiness, but intention, like a held breath between violin notes, like the space between lightning and thunder, like the moment God paused before saying, let there be light. You know, he continues, the Bible skips over my naps. You blink. What I mean, they mention the storm one, but the rest, no record. As if sleeping isn't spiritual. You laugh softly, so you're saying, you took more naps than we know. Oh, definitely, I invented naps. The silence returns, but now it feels like it has a name. You lie there and listen. Not with ears, but with breath, with memory, with the inner part of you that still believes in whispering trees. There's a legend from the old Coptic fathers, rarely translated, about a monk who went 40 days without hearing from God, not even in dreams. On the final night, in tears, he asked the heavens, "Why have you been silent?" And the wind replied, "I was speaking in pauses, so your soul could echo me." Jesus stretches his arms behind his head. People think I speak in paragraphs, but some of my best work's in the ellipses. You look up, the stars seem to nod. Or maybe you're just ready to receive what doesn't need to be explained. You know the verse he murmurs, "Be still and know that I am God." You nod. Most people stop at "be still." But the real miracle happens after that. You sit up slowly watching him, knowing he nods. It's the knowing that grows in the silence. That's the place where faith curls up and finds its breath. There's no sermon, no checklist, just that wide, holy quiet wrapping around you like a shawl woven out of every word he didn't say, but meant. You close your eyes, letting your thoughts fall quiet, one by one, like candles gently snuffed out by grace. And in the silence, you hear something at last, peace holding your hand. Not asking you to understand, just inviting you to stay. You're still seated, still surrounded by silence, so deep it feels padded like a soundproof room designed for the soul. But as your eyelids rest and your breath settles, something shifts beneath your feet, not physically, but narratively. Jesus gives you a look. That look, the one that means we're about to go somewhere strange but sacred. The stars blink, the garden fades, and suddenly, you are inside the belly of a fish, but not in the way you imagined it. In Sunday school, no seaweed hair or cartoonish whale. This place is wide and warm, like a cathedral made of heartbeat. It pulses around you, soft and rhythmic, like being inside a lullaby. Jesus is there too, calmly lighting a small lamp that burns with oil, that smells like cedar wood and hope. "Welcome to Jonah's dream," he says. You blink, wait. What everyone focuses on his prayer. Few wonder what he dreamed in here. The lamplight dances on the walls, which shimmer like opal and ocean combined. In this dream, space-time doesn't matter. Direction doesn't either. There is only inward. Jonah lies curled in a corner, half asleep, mumbling. He doesn't look panicked. He looks suspended, caught between running and resting. There's a midrash obscure whispered between rabbinic pages that suggests Jonah's greatest revelation didn't come from Nineveh or the fish's spit up. It came here, in the pause, in the waiting, in the strange mercy of being swallowed but not destroyed. Jesus kneels beside Jonah's dreaming form. He smooths the prophet's hair and hums the same melody he hummed beside your fig tree earlier. Some journeys require confinement, he says quietly. Not as punishment, but as a cocoon. You wonder how many of your own stuck places were secretly wholly holden cells. Times you thought you'd been abandoned, but really God was building you a sanctuary shaped like delay. Jonah wasn't trapped. Jesus says he was held. He lets that sit, held long enough to dream in peace for the first time. You sit down leaning against the soft glowing walls. They pulse like they remember lullabies from Eden's shore. You think of all the times you begged to be rescued, not realizing that sometimes rescue looks like rest. And then the fish sighs, not audibly, but deeply. You feel it more than hear it, like the ocean itself letting go of tension. Jesus turns to you and hands you a small object, a folded scrap of parchment, dry, despite the dream water around you. You unfold it. On it is written in ancient ink, "Some grace must be digested slowly." You smile. The dream swirls, the fish fades, the stars return. But something in you stays soft, like your soul just got gently rocked by the sea itself. And Jonah, still dreaming, still being held, the stars gently resume their places overhead as the dream fades like courteous actors stepping back behind the curtain. You feel the ground beneath you again, firm, warm, familiar. The garden's back though quieter now, like it's holding its breath to let something holier speak. Ahead through a thicket of slender trees and vines that shimmer like silk in candlelight, you see a soft flicker, orange, steady, welcoming, a campfire. But this is no ordinary fire. It doesn't crackle, it purrs, low and golden, like it's been told to behave in the presence of grace. You approach slowly. The air changes thicker with comfort, laced with something that smells like myrrh figwood and a hint of something sweet, like a memory baked into bread. Jesus is already there, seated on a low stone. No throne, no halo, just him, elbows on knees, barefoot. He's stirring a tiny clay pot hanging just above the fire on a crooked little iron rod. Inside tea, you can smell the herbs chamomile, mint, and something older. Maybe peace has a leaf form, and it grows here. Good timing. He says, not looking up. It's almost ready. You take a seat on the opposite stone. It molds to your shape, like it's been waiting for your weight for years. Maybe it has. There's a teacup already set beside you. Not poured yet, just present. Because in heaven's outskirts, hospitality is never rushed. Somewhere in the flames, you swear you see faces. Not scary, familiar. Ruth laughing beside Naomi. Simeon cradling a dream. A young David tossing stones into a brook. They're not in the fire. They are the warmth. Ever wondered, Jesus says, why we crave campfires? You nod, of course, because we were lit from one, he says simply. First breath wasn't just dust and spirit. It was warmth, too. There's an ancient whispered belief passed through monastic tongues and mothers who hummed scripture while rocking babies that God kindled the stars from the same fire he used to warm Adam's feet. Not for light, for nearness. You watch the flames dance steady and slow. No sparks fly, just glow. Jesus pours the tea. It makes no sound when it hits the cup, like even the drink respects the hush. He hands it to you. Sip carefully. It remembers things. You take a taste. It tastes like home. Not the place you live now, but the one you hope exists, where your name is always safe and someone's always glad you showed up. Why are we here, you ask? Jesus blows on his tea. Because sometimes before I tuck someone in, I like to warm their soul first. You smile. The fire agrees. And the stars lean in just a little closer. You sit quietly now, tea in hand, the warmth curling through your chest like a hymn without a melody. The campfire's glow doesn't demand attention. It invites it the way a soft voice invites a secret. Your gaze drifts downward. Just beside the fire, half in the light, half in the shadow, are a pair of sandals. Worn, dusty, familiar. They're not just any sandals. You feel it in your bones, in your breath. They've walked desert roads and temple steps. They've felt Galilean water on their soles. They've stood toe-to-toe with demons, with lepers, with betrayal. And now they're empty. Jesus follows your gaze. I take them off when I'm not going anywhere, he says. He sips his tea like he's talking about the weather. You look at him. You mean, I'm staying, he replies. And something inside you, tight-braced, clenched, since childhood maybe unfurls. You didn't realize how long you've kept your spiritual bags half-packed just in case the piece left too soon. But here he is, unshod, unmoving, undistracted. There's a phrase buried in a forgotten Syriac manuscript tucked between lines about Jacob's ladder. When the Lord rests his shoes, the soul may rest her storm. You let that wash over you like perfume in the dark. The sandals themselves are simple leather straps, soft from wear, stained from love. You can almost see the outline of his feet in them, the way a sandal remembers its owner, the way bread remembers warmth. Why do you still wear them, you ask? He shrugs. They remind me of dust, and how much I love walking through it. That makes you laugh. He grins. Also, my glorified feet hate boots. You both laugh longer than the joke deserves. The fire leans into the joy, casting golden ripples across the ground, like it's applauding the moment. You're not leaving, you ask again, quieter this time. He leans forward. You've mistaken my stillness for distance before. But I've been beside every campfire your heart ever lit, even the ones you doused out of fear. The sandals seem to glow slightly now, not magic, just memory. Some say the high priest in the Holy of Holies had to go barefoot because holy ground demanded the surrender of what carried us. But here it's reversed. He leaves them on the ground to say, this place, this moment, this you is holy. You take off your own shoes. You hadn't even noticed you were wearing them. Your souls touch sacred earth. And the campfire, it doesn't flare. It settles, as if heaven just exhaled. The fire dims not from lack of wood, but as if it senses it's time to whisper rather than shine. The night grows thicker, not heavy, just deeper, like velvet pressed close. You sit shoeless beside Jesus, the scent of tea lingering like a forgotten hymn. He stirs the fire gently with a stick. Eyes low, voice lower. I want to ask you something, he says. You brace yourself without meaning to. Even here, you expect the question to be hard, like a test. But his tone is different, like he's remembering something, not interrogating. It's the first question God ever asked. He continues. You nod slowly. In Genesis, he nods too. Where are you? The words settle between you, like ash, weightless but unignorable. You think of Adam hiding among leaves that never agreed to be armor. Of Eve half breathless, half ashamed. Of a voice walking in the cool of the day, not to punish, but to look. And somehow, all these centuries later, God is still asking, where are you? Not geographically, not even emotionally, existentially. You feel your answer rising, but it doesn't come in words. It comes in sensations. The ache behind your eyes, the tiredness in your shoulders, the longing in your stomach that no food really cures, the pulse in your throat that only ever beats when you're on the verge of something real. Jesus watches you gently, the way you'd watch a bird decide whether it trusts your outstretched hand. I ask, he says, because most people never stop long enough to ask themselves. You look into the fire. It blinks. One of the embers jumps, but doesn't flee. It lands close to your feet and smolders softly like it wants to be near. There's a lesser-known, Gnostic reflection, often debated, sometimes dismissed, that suggests the true fall of man wasn't disobedience, but forgetting where he was. Not physically, but spiritually. That God's question wasn't rebuke, it was rescue. You glance at Jesus again. You already know where I am. He smiles. Of course. But you don't. You sit with that. Sip what remains of your tea. The wind hushes around you, trees listening in with leaf-curled ears. Where are you? The question echoes again, but now it's not demanding, it's invitational, like a door cracked just wide enough to let the light leak through. I'm here, you finally say. Not bold, not sure, but honest. He nods, satisfied. And then, that's all I needed. A spark from the fire arcs upward, rising into the stars, like a soul finally naming itself. You wonder how many nights God has spent asking questions, not because he needs the answers, but because you do. And somehow you believe this he'll keep asking. As long as it takes. After the question fades into the hush, you lean back, letting your gaze drift upward once more. The stars are still there, still watching, still present, still profoundly unbothered. Their glow is not brighter than before, just more understood. Jesus notices you watching them again. Beautiful, aren't they? You nod, feeling something in your chest ease, like a long-forgotten sigh finally released. They don't show off, he adds. They just remain. You think about that. How everything in your world seems to need recognition. Posts, praise, proof. But the stars, they glow whether you look or not. Some say Jesus continues that when Lucifer fell, the stars were offered a chance to burn brighter, to fill the void. But they refused, said light was never meant to compete. You raise your eyebrows. That story in the Bible, nope. He grins. That one's from a shepherd with too much time under the night sky. But sometimes shepherds know things scholars forget. You laugh, letting your head rest against your hands. The grass beneath you forms a cradle. The night above you forms a cathedral. A particular star catches your eye, small, faint, barely pulsing. It doesn't seem to mind its dimness. Jesus follows your gaze. That one's older than language. There's an obscure rabbinic midrash that says, each star hums its own note in the eternal choir, and the faintest stars sing the most tender lullabies, songs meant only for the ears of those who feel small. You listen, not with ears, but with trust. And yes, there's something there. A pulse, a hum, a softness so deep, it feels like your soul's blanket. They're not in a hurry to rise or fall. Jesus murmurs, they don't measure their worth in brightness. You close your eyes, let that sink in. People, do you whisper? I know. There's a pause. Not the awkward kind. The kind that holds space. I've always loved the quiet ones, he adds. The stars, he turns to look at you, eyes shimmering. And you, your throat tightens. You've always wanted to shine. Not for vanity, but for value. And yet the softest light in the sky has never asked to be seen. It just is. And somehow that's enough. You take a breath. It tastes like cool light and warm stillness. I think you say softly, I've spent years trying to earn the light. Jesus lays back beside you again, hands behind his head, sandals still off. You are light, he says. Not because you shine, because you stay. Above you, the stars nod, not dramatically, just once. Like old friends who don't brag but always show up. The stars stay where they are, patient, impartial witnesses to everything you've spoken and everything you still hold inside. The fire beside you softens to embers, now not dying, just resting. Like it, you are warm, not just skin warm, soul warm. Jesus sits up slowly, brushes a bit of ash from his sleeve, and reaches behind him. From somewhere, perhaps from the folds of the night itself, he pulls out a scroll. Not long, not ancient looking. It's bound with a single cord of deep crimson thread, tied in a knot you instinctively know you're not meant to untie. Not yet. He holds it with both hands, offering it not to open, but to receive. "This is yours," he says quietly. You take it. It feels alive, not pulsing like a heart, but weighted like truth, as if every moment of stillness you've ever sat through has been wrapped tightly inside this parchment. You trace the edge with your fingers. The material isn't papyrus, it's something else, like pressed time and whispered prayers. "What is it?" you ask. "A story," he replies, "but not finished and not ready." You look up confused. "There's a reason heaven seals some things," he continues. "Not because they're secret, because they're sacred." You hold the scroll in your lap. It radiates with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for birth. There's a verse, he says in Revelation, about a scroll sealed with 7 seals. Angels waited, elders waited, even I waited to open it. He leans forward, voice soft but glowing. Some peace isn't found in knowing. It's found in holding what's not yet. You glance at the scroll again. The crimson thread looks almost like a vein. Not grotesque, just vital. There's a legend from early Armenian monks scribbled in the margins of psalters, long forgotten, that says every soul is given a scroll when born. Not a prophecy, not a contract, a promise. Written in ink only God can read. Unfurled only when you've stopped trying to control the plot. You clutch it closer to your chest, surprised by the tears warming your eyes. Not sad tears, not even joyful ones. Just release. Jesus sees it. Of course he does. You don't have to understand it, he says. You just have to carry it. You nod slowly. "What's written on mine?" you whisper. He smiles. You'll know when you're not trying so hard to read ahead. You chuckle through your exhale. The scroll feels lighter now, like it's learned your heartbeat. You tuck it under your arm. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't need answers. You're content, holding mystery, and walking slowly. You rise gently from the firelight, scroll tucked safely under your arm, and walk a few paces toward the edge of the clearing. The stars follow quietly, loyally. Behind you, Jesus remains by the embers, letting you wander into a story only your soul knows how to enter. And then it comes an image you didn't summon. Peter, not the bold preacher, not the miracle walker. Peter alone at night, sitting on a rooftop, legs swinging off the edge like a child's. Unable to sleep. You're not sure if it's a memory, a vision, or a holy daydream, but it's real. The wind tugs at his cloak. His eyes are red, not from tears, but exhaustion, the spiritual kind, where no pillow ever feels quite soft enough. In the distance, someone is singing. A widow, maybe. Or a fisherman nursing his regrets with melody. Peter leans forward, elbows on knees, and mutters, "I don't know if I'm still worthy." You hold your breath, because somehow you've said those words too. There's a story, almost apocryphal, whispered through Eastern Orthodox liturgy about Peter after the ascension. That some nights he still denied Jesus, not in voice but in doubt. That though forgiven, he couldn't forget. Jesus appears beside him in your vision, not grand, just there. He hands Peter a small piece of bread and a smile so quiet it barely disturbs the wind. "You're thinking of the rooster again," Jesus says. Peter chuckles darkly. "Aren't you?" "No," he answers. "I'm thinking about how you ran into the tomb first. The silence after that isn't awkward, it's sacred." Peter stares at the sky. "I still feel like I failed." Jesus leans back, arms folded behind his head. "You did." Peter flinches. But Jesus continues, "You also stayed. I left, but you came back." Peter sighs. didn't walk on water very far. You stepped out of the boat, Jesus replies. That's more than most do. In your chest, something shifts, not because the conversation is yours, but because you realize it could be. Maybe it has been in 100 night silences you never knew were shared. You return to your body, your breath, your place beneath the stars. Jesus has come beside you again. He saw what you saw. Even rocks get tired, he says softly, looking up. Peter, he nods. Faith isn't about never falling asleep. It's about what you do when the night gets too long to fake strength. You sit, you rest, and maybe this is your rooftop moment. Not to proclaim anything, just to be seen in the dark and still called worthy. The air shifts, lightens, as if even the night, with all its ancient weight, decided to unclench its fists for a while. You're still sitting beside Jesus, but now the trees begin to rustle more playfully. Not wind, something else. You hear it then. Laughter. Not loud, not mocking. Just gentle joy. Like someone remembering a joke from heaven's quieter side. You glance toward the olive branches above. They sway softly, and for the first time tonight, you swear they giggle. One leaf twirls down and lands on your head like a crown that doesn't take itself too seriously. Jesus grins. They like you. You raise an eyebrow. The trees. He nods. They've heard your sighs. Thought you could use the opposite sound for once. You smile, leaning back, watching more leaves dance down, spinning like ballerinas in slow motion. The branches overhead move just enough to whisper, not enough to interrupt. There's a legend mostly ignored by scholars, kept alive by children, and one or two desert monks that says some trees still remember the garden. Not in structure, but in spirit. And every so often when someone rests without performing, they laugh not out of mockery, but out of relief. They remember joy, Jesus says. The kind that doesn't need to explain itself. You laugh too, though you're not sure why. Maybe because everything tonight has felt so serious. Sacred, yes, but weighty. And now the weight floats like smoke. Your chest feels roomier. Even your thoughts unclench. I didn't expect to laugh tonight, you say. Jesus shrugs. That's the holiest kind. You look at him sideways. You ever laugh while preaching? Oh, constantly. Usually at myself. You chuckle. He leans closer like he's about to confess something. One time in Nazareth, I tripped on a rug mid-sermon and landed face first in a bowl of olives. You stare at him. He nods solemnly. Peter didn't let it go for months. The trees above shake with delight. You both sit in the shared silliness of it all. Because holiness doesn't always wear gold and incense. Sometimes it wears dirt under its nails and laughter in its lungs. There's an oft overlooked passage in the Talmud that says, the angels assigned to laughter are the lightest ones. They're the only ones permitted to land on leaves without breaking them. One such angel drifts nearby now, perhaps. You can't see it, but you feel it. Not everything needs to be solemn to be sacred. Some things are holy because they're silly. You close your eyes and listen to the leaves whisper again. They're not giving advice. They're just enjoying your company. And for the first time in too long, joy doesn't feel like a luxury. It feels like part of your design. The laughter fades, not abruptly, but like a song that knows exactly when to end. The leaves above return to their gentle hush, and the night breathes deep again. You and Jesus sit in that quiet, your shoulders no longer pulled tight, your thoughts no longer trying to rehearse or correct. Then as your gaze drifts along the edge of the path, you see it. A rock, just sitting there. It isn't large, isn't carved, isn't glowing. Just a simple flat stone about the size of a folded cloak. It looks ordinary, so ordinary it almost feels out of place among all the wonder. But Jesus stands and walks to it, kneels beside it. This one's special, he says. It's still waiting. For what you ask, for rain. You come closer. The rock is dry, cracked in some places, but not broken. It has the look of something that once knew softness and hasn't given up on its return. Some hearts are like this. Jesus continues, running a hand across the surface. Not hard, just thirsty. Not stubborn, just tired of pretending. You crouch beside him, curious. There's a tradition, he says, that in the wilderness the rock Moses struck twice wasn't defiant, it was patient. It knew the timing wasn't Moses to decide. You blink. But Moses got in trouble for that. Yes, Jesus says gently. Because even prophets forget, sometimes miracles must be trusted into God's rhythm, not forced into human urgency. He taps the rock once. This one's waited centuries, not bitter, just ready. You sit down beside it, placing your hand on its warm surface. You imagine how many storms it's missed, how many feet have passed by without noticing, how many seasons whispered, not yet. And somehow you relate. Jesus sits beside you, not to explain the rock, but to let you share in its waiting. There's a whispered teaching from a scroll, only partially preserved. A verse never canonized yet recited by mystics. Blessed is the stone that thirsts in silence, for it shall be softened by heaven's patience. You wonder how much of your life has felt like this rock. Dry, unseen, promised something you weren't sure would ever come. And Jesus, he doesn't try to fix it, doesn't rush the rain. He simply stays. You know, he says, after a moment, even dry ground is sacred when someone waits with it. You smile. The stars above seem to pause too, mid-glow, watching this moment of mutual stillness. The rock does not crack, it does not weep. But in the warmth of this shared silence, you believe. Maybe tonight, for the first time in a long time, it feels seen. And so do you. The quiet lingers sweet and thick as honey left in sun-warmed jars. You remain seated beside the rock, your hand still resting on its weathered surface. The stars above blink with the same steady patience as before, and the trees give you no agenda. No expectations, only presence. And that's when you feel it, not a breeze, not a movement, but a nearness. A presence behind you, like the way sunlight enters a room uninvited and yet entirely welcome. You turn your head slowly. Jesus is no longer seated. He's standing just behind you now, closer than before. And he's inside your heart. Not metaphorically, literally. He didn't knock. He didn't ask permission. He just was. I don't knock here, he says softly. His voice isn't near your ear. It's inside your breath. You blink. I thought, you always knock, you say, echoing that verse about doors and handles and hearts too proud to open. I do, he says, when I'm a stranger. But I'm not a stranger here. There's an ancient Syriac chant that was only ever sung in monasteries no one remembers. The Lord who lives within does not enter. He awakens. You feel that now. He didn't come tonight. He's always been here. You just stopped long enough to notice. You glance around. So, this whole garden isn't outside you. He finishes. It's rooted in your spirit. The fire, the fig tree, the feather, the laughter in the leaves, even the rock waiting for rain, it's all inside. You place your palm on your chest. Feels like I forgot. He kneels before you again. Not grand, not glowing, just there. Most do. The world is loud. But I never left. There's a story barely recorded, passed down in whispers by desert fathers, that when Jesus descended into the tomb, his spirit spent those 3 days walking through the hearts of his people, dusting off their neglected altars, lighting candles no one else could see. Maybe this moment is one of those candles. You close your eyes. You don't pray. You don't try. You listen, and inside that listening, you hear him. Not preaching, not fixing, not advising, just humming. That same melody again, the one from the fig tree, the one from the fish. It's always been the same. It's the sound of him knowing you. You open your eyes again, but the world doesn't feel external now. Everything holy has come home. And Jesus, he doesn't knock anymore. Because this place, this soul of yours, has no door. Just a welcome. You rise slowly, unsure if you're standing in a garden or in the deepest hallway of your own spirit. But then again, maybe they've always been the same place. Beneath your feet, the ground shifts just slightly into fine pale sand. Cool at the edges, warm at the center, like it's been holding sunlight from 1,000 forgotten mornings. The path stretches gently forward, soft as breath. You take a step. The sand doesn't sink. It receives. Another step, then another. And with each footfall, a strange thing happens. The prints you leave behind shimmer, not with glitter or glory, with memory. Jesus walks beside you, hands loose at his sides, eyes watching your steps, not his own. You know he says quietly, "Sand remembers more than stone." You tilt your head. Really, he nods. Stone records commandments. Sand records presence. There's a tradition rarely taught, mostly treasured in quiet corners of Judean scrolls, that says the wilderness didn't just witness the journey of Israel. It memorized it. Every path, every complaint, every song. The sand kept it all. Some even believed that on Judgment Day, the ground itself would speak, not to condemn, but to testify, "I saw them. I saw them try." You take another step. The print flashes briefly with a familiar ache, loneliness maybe, or that season when prayer felt like voicemail. You glance back, startled. It remembers you ask. All of it, Jesus says, but without judgment. Sand doesn't grade you. It holds space for the moments you didn't think mattered. A few steps later, you stop. One footprint behind you glows faintly. That one, he says, reading your thoughts. That was the day you almost gave up, but didn't. You stare at it. "I don't remember that," you whisper. "I do," he replies. So does the sand. A breeze moves across the path, gentle as a kiss on the forehead. It stirs the grains around your prints, but doesn't erase them. Why doesn't it blow them away? Because they're not evidence, Jesus says. They're invitations. To what? To believe your journey was never invisible. You keep walking. The scroll under your arm feels lighter again. The feather in your pocket shifts softly, like it too remembers. Farther ahead, the sand turns a soft gold under the starlight. And you realize it's not a path of arrival, it's a path of witness. Every step, every season, every silence, recorded not in ink, but in dust, willing to cradle your weight. You pause one last time and look behind, not out of regret, just reverence. And the sand seems to whisper, "We saw you. You were never alone." The path curves again gently, as if shaped by stories instead of topography. The sand gives way to soft soil, then stone worn smooth by centuries of sacred footsteps. You move without hurry now. Every pace feels anointed by stillness. Jesus slows beside you, then stops. He glances over his shoulder, eyes twinkling. Wait for it. You pause. The air changes. Faint footsteps approach from behind, light, precise, deliberate. You turn. An angel stands a few paces away, robes, slightly rumpled hair, windswept, as if heaven has weather. He's holding a small pouch and an apologetic smile. "Sorry I'm late," the angel says, not sheepishly, but with calm assurance, like someone who knows the destination, doesn't mind delays. Jesus grins. "You're right on time." You blink. Angels can be late. Only when they're meant to be. Jesus replies. The angel steps forward, placing the pouch gently in your hands. It hums with a low warmth, like something alive and resting. Inside you feel weight, not heavy, but meaningful. "What is this, you ask?" The angel bows slightly. "These are prayers that didn't want to be early." You look at Jesus confused. There are moments, he explains, when answers would have arrived too soon, before your heart had room. So they waited. A hush follows, like heaven itself is nodding. There's an ancient Ethiopian manuscript, barely legible now, that tells of angels who walk slowly on purpose, so that a weary soul might catch their breath before grace arrives. These aren't warriors. These are companions of the quiet. You loosen the pouch's drawstring. Inside light. But not blinding. It flickers like candlelight through rain. Each flicker, you somehow know, is a delayed kindness, timed perfectly to miss your impatience, but meet your surrender. "I used to think delay meant denial," you say softly. The angel responds, "It meant preparation." Jesus nods. Some answers would have crushed you too soon. Others would have distracted you from me. You grip the pouch tighter. It doesn't feel like a container. It feels like a friend. So you ask, what happens now? Now the angel replies, stepping back with a soft smile. You trust that nothing is lost when love remembers. Then he vanishes, not dramatically, just gently, like mist excusing itself before sunrise. Jesus looks at you. See, even angels walk slow when the soul needs time to unfold. You chuckle. Was he always assigned to me? Oh no, Jesus grins. He volunteers for the ones who try to fix themselves too fast. You exhale. And in the distance, just barely, a bell chimes, not of urgency, but of arrival. After the angel's departure, the night feels somehow larger, as though the stars leaned in to fill the space he left behind. You walk a little farther, until Jesus gently veers off the path toward a small clearing where the moonlight pools like water and the trees form a quiet cathedral. At the center of it all, a simple wooden table, round, low to the ground, and on it, a cup. Small, handmade, not ornate, the kind of cup that belongs in a shepherd's satchel or on a carpenter's shelf. But even from where you stand, you can tell it's not ordinary. Jesus motions for you to sit beside it. You lower yourself to the earth, the soil slightly warm beneath you, and watch. The cup is empty. But as you watch, something begins to rise into it. Not liquid, not smoke. Light. Tiny pinpricks of starlight drift down like shy fireflies, each one landing inside the cup and vanishing just before overflow. The cup fills slowly, reverently. With what prayers you forgot to finish. The ones you whispered halfway and abandoned. The ones you tried to start but fell asleep before amen. The ones you never voiced because you didn't think they counted. Jesus watches them settle like fireflies coming home. They never expire, he says. They wait. You blink slowly, heart tight. Even the angry ones, especially those. There's a little-known verse from the Apocryphal Testament, of Levi, never canonized, often ignored, which claims that God keeps a separate vessel for every soul's unfinished prayers, not to judge them, to complete them. You look down again. The cup is nearly full now. Each star that enters it glows briefly in your memory. A night you cried, but told no one. A car ride where you only managed God please. A hospital waiting room, a park bench. That one moment when all you did was sigh, but the sigh knew his name. Jesus nudges the cup slightly toward you. You peer inside. The light doesn't blind, it bathes. Why do you show me this now, you whisper? Because peace doesn't only come from answered prayer, he says. Sometimes it comes from knowing none of them were forgotten. You lean in closer. The cup smells faintly like myrrh, salt water, and something oddly sweet, like birthday cake from a memory you can't quite place. Do I drink it, you ask? No. He smiles. You carry it. You wrap your hands around it. It's warm, but not fragile. Like it was made to journey with you, not be shelved in safety. As you rise, Jesus brushes a star from your shoulder. Don't worry, he says. They'll keep coming. You glance at the heavens. A single star winks. Maybe just to say, we heard you. We always did. You carry the cup now cradled carefully in both hands, as if holding a flickering part of your own soul. The starlight within doesn't slosh or fade. It seems to settle into you, humming softly, like a lullaby sung under breath. The path curls gently upward toward a distant rise. Trees begin to stretch taller, leaner cedars, and cypress the kind with bark like old parchment and roots like buried rivers. As you reach the crest, Jesus slows beside you. He places a hand on your arm. Stop here, he says. You do. And then you see him. A lone figure near the edge of the tree line, standing very still. He's wrapped in weathered robes, his staff leaning against one shoulder. Face lined with the geography of wilderness years. Moses, but not the movie version. This Moses is tired, soft-eyed, and deeply still. He stands gazing out toward a valley you cannot yet see, his back to you. But something about his posture speaks volumes. Not defeat, not weariness, just a pause long enough to make peace with something he can't enter. Jesus speaks quietly beside you. He got this far. You feel it. Before you understand it, this is the moment before Mount Nebo, the night before the end of the journey. He was faithful, Jesus continues. But even the faithful need to grieve what they don't get to finish. You watch as Moses sighs, not theatrically, just truthfully. He reaches out and touches a tree, his fingers curling around the bark like it holds the stories, the scrolls forgot to write. There's a midrash hard to find, harder to translate, that tells of Moses spending his final night not in mourning, but listening to the wind for the sound of the promised land's laughter. Just once, just enough. You feel that now. Jesus steps forward just a little. He wasn't punished, he was preserved. Some stories are too holy to reach their end. You nod slowly, your throat tight. You think of the dreams you've buried, the promises you no longer chase, the almosts that ache quietly in the corners of your memory. I thought peace was about closure, you say softly. Jesus shakes his head. Peace is about knowing you're not lost, even when the path ends sooner than you hoped. Moses turns just slightly and smiles. Not at you, not at Jesus, at the stars, as if saying, it's okay. I was seen. You watch as he places his hand over his chest, over the space where silence has kept vigil. Then he fades, not disappears, just fades into the trees, like light choosing to rest. Jesus turns to you. Let's keep going. You don't have to reach every promise to be part of it. You take a deep breath and step forward, carrying your cup your scroll, your feather, and now perhaps a little of Moses's permission to pause. As you continue down the sloping path from the tree line, the air grows warmer, not in temperature, but in texture. It thickens with a kind of weightless comfort, like walking into a room where someone already prayed over every corner. Jesus guides you toward a circle of stone benches beneath a low fig tree. The leaves above are still, as if holding their breath. Resting there folded neatly on one of the benches is a blanket, not just any blanket. This one shimmers faintly, not with light, but with memory. A deep woven gold threaded through with dusky violet and hints of silver like moon dust caught in wool. You look at Jesus. He nods. Tabor, Mount Tabor, the mountain of the Transfiguration, where light spilled from his face and the veil between worlds thinned like dew in morning sun. This blanket, he says, picking it up gently, was laid on the ground the night after, when the glory faded and my friends didn't know what to do with what they'd seen. He hands it to you. It's heavier than it looks, not burdensome anchoring, like it knows how to hold souls in place when the light has passed and the ordinary returns. There's a legend, Jesus continues, that one of the disciples kept this blanket tucked away, not to worship it, just to wrap himself in on nights when the world felt too dim. You let it unfold across your lap. The warmth seeps in quickly like recognition. There's a rare Eastern hymn, sung only once a year at dawn, that whispers, "What wrapped the radiance may warm the remainder." The idea that anything that touched glory retains something of it, like clothes that still smell faintly of incense long after the service ends. Jesus sits beside you. We talk a lot about the mountaintop, not enough about the descent. You nod. Coming down is harder than going up. He smiles. Peace isn't the glow. Peace is letting the glow become part of your bones even after the clouds return. The blanket slips over your shoulders like an embrace that remembers every version of you, including the one you forgot was loved. You exhale long, deep, almost unfamiliar, like your body finally caught up with your soul. Can I keep it, you ask? He doesn't answer directly, just gestures toward the stars. Some things aren't taken, they're carried. You pull the blanket tighter. It doesn't erase your doubts. It doesn't erase your questions, but it holds them. And for tonight, that's enough. You sit cloaked in the warmth of the Tabor blanket, your shoulders lowered for the first time in what feels like years. Not because anything is resolved, but because you finally feel allowed to not be ready. The silence is beautiful again, not empty, full. And just as your mind begins to wander down one of its usual corridors, regret or planning, or the soft ache of old what-ifs, Jesus interrupts you. Gently. I was there, he says. You blink, where he doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. You know the moment he means. The one you shoved so deep into your memory that you stopped bringing it up in prayer because it always made the room feel colder. He's not shaming you. He's joining you there. Sometimes he says you think I'm being silent, but I'm interrupting you in ways too soft to hear. There's a moment, just a heartbeat, where your eyes sting. Not from pain, but recognition. You think back on all the subtle pauses in your life. The jobs that didn't call back. The relationships that paused instead of exploded. The flights that got delayed. The days that felt derailed, but somehow birthed better mornings. Those were me, you ask. He nods, pouring you a fresh cup of that starlight tea. I answer more often with detours than declarations. There's an old Chaldean proverb passed through oral tradition: when God whispers, the wise miss it, but the tired feel it in their bones. You sip the tea, and it tastes like something that always knew how to wait. Jesus sets down his cup. Even tonight, this garden, the fig tree, the feather, the silence, it wasn't scheduled, but it interrupted your evening. You smile. I wasn't planning to rest. He returns the smile. I know. That's why I interrupted. You both sit a while longer. And as you do, you start to feel them, those micro-interruptions you used to call distractions. The power outage that made you cancel a meeting. The rainstorm that forced you to stay indoors. The dream that woke you at 3 a.m. for no reason except to remind you that your soul still hears music. Is this how you speak? You whisper. Sometimes he answers, not to stop your plans, but to soften them. The blanket around your shoulders shifts slightly, as if remembering something too. Above you, a star blinks, not in code, just in rhythm. And you realize peace doesn't always arrive with answers. Sometimes it arrives with interruptions, too gentle to recognize. In the moment, interruptions that clear space for what heaven has been trying to whisper all along. You've grown still again, tea in hand, blanket draped across your shoulders, thoughts soft as lamb's wool. The stars above seem to wait for your next breath before continuing their quiet procession. Then Jesus says something unexpected. There was a day, he begins, when I didn't perform the miracle. You glance over, surprised. I could have, he adds, but I didn't. He doesn't say which day. He doesn't have to. Because suddenly you remember one of your own. That moment when the healing didn't come. When the door stayed shut. When the answer was no. Or not yet. Or worse, nothing at all. You swallow slowly. Why not? He doesn't rush the answer. He takes a sip first. The steam from his cup swirls upward, like incense rising from an altar you didn't know you'd built inside your own waiting. Because the miracle wasn't the point. He says, the quiet was. There's a passage in one of the early Christian letters, not canonized, but preserved on brittle parchment, that reads, he withheld his power so that his presence might be enough. You think of the man at the pool of Bethesda, the one waiting 38 years for healing, and the woman bleeding 12, and Lazarus who had to die before the glory could rise. You look back at Jesus, so the silence was the miracle. Sometimes he says, sometimes the peace of no performance is holier than the spectacle of answered prayer. You exhale, deep, like you're finally letting go of an argument you've been having with God for decades. Jesus leans back on his elbows. When I walked the earth, I didn't just bring power, I brought presence. And sometimes presence meant doing nothing visible. You laugh, half sad, half relieved. That's not very marketable. No, he grins, but it's very eternal. You sit with that. And then you remember a quiet moment from your own past, a hospital room where nothing happened, a Sunday morning where no tears came, a prayer where you didn't feel a thing, and somehow that prayer still held. Did you skip it? You asked to teach me something. No, he answers. I skipped it because I was enough without it. The wind stirs lightly, brushing your cheek, like a parent adjusting your blanket after you've already fallen asleep. Peace settles not like a miracle performed, but like a burden lifted, because you finally don't need the miracle to be loved. You sit back again, eyes turned skyward. One star blinks, and for the first time, You don't ask it for anything. You just let it be. The flames from the campfire still flicker gently, even after all this time. You thought they might fade, but they haven't. If anything, they've grown softer, like they've learned your rhythm and have decided to match it. You return to the fire, sitting beside it again. Jesus joins you, wordless content. The stars overhead hum their ancient lullaby. The tea in your cup stays warm, and then you notice something strange. The fire is praying, not in words, not in voice, but in motion. Each flame lifts and bends like a hand raised in worship, or a soul curled into a psalm. The embers shift in patterns, small glows that pulse in time with something inside you. You realize it's not reacting to your presence. It's responding to your spirit. Jesus watches you watch it. Fires don't just warm, he says, they remember. You lean forward. What's it praying for you? He says simply. Your breath catches. There's an ancient Armenian legend not recorded in any gospel, but whispered through him about a fire on a cold night in the wilderness that began to pray for the wanderers beside it. It didn't offer protection. It offered intercession. I didn't know fire could do that, you murmur. It does, Jesus replies. When humans carry too much, sometimes the earth itself asks for mercy on their behalf. You watch the fire again. Its movements become more deliberate, like a soul trying to say the thing it couldn't earlier. And you realize, maybe this isn't your fire. Maybe it's the one your tears built years ago when you didn't know what to say, but needed something to stay lit anyway. Is this my fire, you ask, barely above a whisper. Jesus nods. Lit the first time you let go. You don't remember lighting anything, but your spirit does. You reach out, a hand palm open. The heat doesn't burn, it blesses. It hums a kind of benediction. No words, just warmth where wounds used to be. And then you hear it. A sound faint but certain. Let it be so. It doesn't come from Jesus. It doesn't come from you. It comes from the fire itself. The flames flicker again, not with need, but with completion. The campfire has prayed for you, not because you earned it, but because heaven sometimes uses ordinary things like wood and spark and wind to say, I see you. You lean back, no miracle needed, no breakthrough begged for. Just the quiet, living truth you were prayed for before you ever learned how to ask. The fire glows behind you now as you walk again, slower than before, not from weariness, but from fullness. Like someone who has eaten, wept, laughed, and now carries nothing urgent except wonder. Jesus walks beside you in silence, both of you wrapped in the kind of stillness that doesn't press for conversation. The path isn't marked anymore. There's no trail, no signposts, not even footprints to follow. You glance around. Where are we going? He smiles. We're already there. You blink, but we're still walking. That's how grace works, he says. It arrives before your understanding catches up. The ground beneath your feet is soft and shifting, sometimes moss, sometimes sand, sometimes cloud-like dust that glows faintly. There's no map, no compass, only presence. I don't know where I am, you admit. That's okay, he replies. Maps are for tourists, your family. You laugh gently, but it hits something deep. There's a curious little verse buried in the book of Sirach, not often quoted, that says, "The righteous walk crooked paths that circle back to Eden, though they know it not." You feel that now. Every turn you've taken, every detour, every apparent wrong way, maybe none of it was wasted. Maybe grace collects your missteps like stones, for a mosaic you can't see from here. You pause. So, I'm not lost. Jesus stops, looks at you, and says, with sacred softness, "You've never been lost, just unfamiliar." You look out ahead. There's nothing visibly waiting. No grand arrival point. Just more of this. More sky, more quiet, more peace. And if I stop walking, you ask, "I'll sit with you," he says. "And if I wander, I'll walk beside you." You breathe that in like incense. Maybe the destination isn't a place. Maybe it's a person. And maybe, just maybe, the journey is holy, not because of what it leads to, but because of who walks with you in the uncertainty. Jesus keeps moving. You follow not because you know where he's going, but because you trust the way he moves. No path, no printout, no 5-step plan, just peace with feet and love without hurry. You step again, lighter now. The map never mattered. The presence did. And presence hasn't left your side once. The path, though pathless, leads you into a grove where the air grows richer, like it's been slow cooked in sunlight and silence. You smell something new, warm, savory, ancient. Bread. Jesus veers slightly ahead and gestures toward a low stone table tucked beneath the outstretched arms of an olive tree. Upon it rests a small loaf still steaming, wrapped loosely in a cloth, woven with threads the color of sunrise and prayer. "Sit," he says. You do. He unwraps the loaf, and you notice immediately, this isn't ordinary bread. It looks handmade, but not by human hands. The crust is dusted in something golden. Not flour, not ash, something that smells like harvest and heaven. He breaks the loaf in two. The inside glows faintly, not with light, but with remembrance. The scent fills the grove like Sabbath mornings, in a place you've never lived, but deeply remember. You take a piece. So does he. You chew, slowly. It tastes like rest, like tears that finally found language, like laughter at a table with people who never left, like the prayer you said once 10 years ago that still echoes in God's pantry. "This isn't manna," you murmur. Jesus shakes his head. "No, it's from the other side." You look up, startled. "What do you mean?" He smiles. "This bread is made from grain that hasn't grown yet, from fields beyond the veil. Some things ripen in heaven before they arrive on earth." There's a line from a nearly forgotten desert sermon, heard only once by a gathering of nomads under a linen tent. The kingdom needs bread from eternal soil and bakes it in time. You think of communion, how you've tasted wafers, slices, crumbs. But never this. This bread isn't symbolic, it's personal. Each bite affirms something you didn't know you were questioning, that you are sustained, that heaven isn't far, that what feeds you doesn't always come from what you can see. Jesus tears off another piece and hands it to you. "This," he says, "is the flavor of peace that outlives pain." You swallow slowly. It rests heavy in your belly, but not burdened. It feels settled, like it found a home inside you that had been empty for far too long. "I didn't know I was hungry," you say. He grins. "You've been fasting from joy longer than you thought." You both finish in silence. The loaf disappears, but the warmth remains. You rise stronger than when you sat. Fed, not just body, not just soul, but memory, future, and the part of you that never stopped believing in the taste of something holy. You and Jesus walk again, not rushed, not aimless. The bread still lingers in your chest, like the memory of a song you didn't know you loved until the second verse. The grove opens slightly, and in its center you find something unexpected. A circle of bedrolls, simple, frayed, unadorned, Scattered like a band of brothers once lay here, too tired to arrange themselves neatly. Blankets still hold the shape of sleep. Boots are kicked off half-heartedly stacked. A half-eaten fig rests on a stone. Jesus kneels and runs his hand across one of the sleeping mats. They didn't always write about these nights, he says, but they mattered. You walk slowly through the circle. This isn't a memory museum. This is leftover holiness. No parchment records what Peter mumbled in his dreams. No gospel captured the sound of John snoring, or the way Thomas always seemed to sleep closest to the fire. But they happened. They doubted in daylight, Jesus says, but they still camped with me at night. There's a passage from an old Alexandrian scroll, never widely read, that claims the disciples once spent a full night beneath a meteor shower. In silence, awed, not by theology, but by stars they didn't feel worthy to be under. They said nothing, and that silence fed them. You kneel beside one of the mats. You feel warmth still in the fabric, as if someone just rose a moment before you arrived. They were tired, you whisper. He nods, but they stayed. You wonder how many stories were too human for the scriptures, the foot blisters. The nights one of them cried for no reason, the soft laughter that bubbled up when they'd already run out of food and patience. Did they know how holy it was, you ask? No, he says. But I did. You lie down just for a moment. The bedroll shifts like it recognizes your shape. You stare at the canopy of trees above, remembering that these men who changed the world also napped through glory and argued over status and fell asleep during prayers. And Jesus, he led them. I don't expect strength without rest, he says, stretching out beside you. Some of my favorite moments were when they had nothing left to give. You smile, eyes softening, even when they doubted. Especially then he replies, because doubt doesn't disqualify rest, and faith doesn't mean sleeping with one eye open. Tonight their stories return not to teach, but to belong. You close your eyes not because you're exhausted, but because you now know. Even the unrecorded moments matter. Even the messier parts of the journey are holy. Even now, your quiet presence is enough. You rise from the bedroll slowly as if waking from someone else's memory. Jesus stands nearby brushing leaves off his sleeves. The circle of sleeping disciples fades into the hush of olive trees whose twisting branches now lean low heavier here, like they remember something weighty. You know where you are. Even before the name crosses your lips, your soul tightens softly. Gethsemane. Jesus walks ahead, quieter now. You follow him into a grove where the shadows hold their breath. The air tastes older here, like stone sweat and unshed grief. This place, he says without turning, still echoes. You pause, with what he points to the ground. At first you hear nothing, but when you close your eyes it comes. A single sob, faint, echoing, more silence than sound. It's mine, he says gently. One that didn't make it into scripture. You look at him, not for answers, just to be present. I asked them to stay awake, he says. They couldn't. You both stand still among the trees that bore witness to his unraveling. The trees whose roots soaked in prayers too heavy for daylight. Prayers that were sweat. Prayers that were blood. Prayers that weren't answered the way we'd hoped. I didn't need their strength, he adds, just their nearness. There's an ancient Coptic homily that suggests the olive trees in Gethsemane leaned forward during that night, trying to bear the weight of God's sorrow like arms stretching toward the unholdable. You place your hand on one of the trunks. It feels warm, alive. like it remembers. Do you come here often, you ask? He smiles, sad but full. Every time someone feels abandoned in the dark, you sit on a low root. The ground here is holy, not because it's where Jesus broke, but because it's where he chose not to run. I didn't know prayer could sound like this, you whisper. Sometimes he says, the most honest prayers have no sentences, just sobs. You feel your own tears rising, not from despair, but from permission. You don't have to tidy your faith before bringing it here. This grove does not judge your silence. This Savior does not shame your sadness. The echoes around you are not ghosts. They are companions. The trees rustle. You hear it again, another whisper. A second sob. This one is not his. It's yours. From years ago, a night you thought no one heard you cry. Jesus looks at you. I was here then too. You nod, eyes closing. And in that shared stillness, the agony becomes intimacy. Not erased, not undone, but held. The sobs in the garden fade, not into absence, but into rhythm. You sit quietly on the low root, watching the way silence seems to curl around the edges of the olive grove, like smoke from a snuffed candle. Nothing urgent moves here. Even time seems content to linger behind. Jesus picks up a twig and begins drawing lazy spirals into the soil. Do you know he says how I end most of my sentences? You look up expecting something profound. He smiles with a pause. You laugh softly. It's not very theological. It's perfectly theological, he replies. Pauses are where heaven breathes. There's a scroll crumbling and half lost in the sands near Qumran that suggests God did not speak creation all at once. That between each, let there be. He paused, not to rest, but to savor. You feel that now. This moment isn't about revelation. It's about recognition. The holiness of not rushing to what's next. Jesus drops the twig. People think the miracles are the verbs, but the holiest things I did were often the commas. You think of it, the space between touching the leper and speaking healing, the breath before saying, Lazarus, come forth, the pause before lifting his eyes to bless the bread, even the 3 days in the tomb, God's long ellipsis. You close your eyes and let that wash over you. For once, you don't need to finish a thought. You just need to sit in the middle of it. Sometimes Jesus says peace is what you feel when you stop editing the silence. You chuckle. I'm always trying to tie everything into a tidy bow. I know, he grins. You've got a little Pharisee in your planner. You smirk. You're not wrong. The breeze kicks up slightly, brushing against your cheeks like punctuation made of air. And you realize not every prayer has to land. Not every chapter needs a conclusion. Some of the most divine sentences end in a pause so soft, only the soul hears it. You take a breath, then another, and Jesus doesn't say anything more, because he doesn't have to. The story isn't over. But it's okay to rest on the comma. The silence lingers like incense, sweet, slow, and oddly steadying. You stand, stretch a little, and brush soil from your clothes. As you do, your fingers graze something tucked in the side of your robe. You pause, reach in, and pull it out. A thread, red, frayed at one end, soft but strong. You didn't put it there. Jesus watches you hold it. His eyes soften. That's yours, he says. You examine it. No spool, no needle, no label. Just a single thread long enough to tie a memory around, but short enough to fit unnoticed in your palm. What is it, you ask? He nods gently toward the sky. It's from the veil. Your breath catches. The veil. The one that tore when he died. The one that separated the holy from the human. The thread glows faintly in your hand, as if remembering the moment it was freed. There's a legend, Jesus says, passed from mother to daughter in the quiet homes of Jerusalem, that when the veil tore a few strands, escaped into the world to find those who felt furthest from the holy and stitch them back in. You hold it tighter, warm, alive. Why me, you whisper. He looks at you like you already know. You think back to the seasons you felt too far gone, too flawed, too afraid to belong in any sacred story. And yet here it is, evidence that holiness was never about being whole. It was about being woven in, even when unraveling. In early Christian liturgy, rarely read aloud, there's a phrase, "We who carry the thread of torn glory shall never be outside the curtain again." You blink away the sting in your eyes. Jesus reaches out and gently presses the thread to your chest. It's not a reminder of the tear, he says. It's a reminder of the opening. You swallow hard. What do I do with it? Keep it close, he says. Some nights when silence feels too wide and heaven too high, you'll touch it and remember the veil was torn toward you. You nod slowly, folding it carefully into your pocket. It disappears inside the fabric, but its presence hums like a heartbeat you didn't know was yours. You feel different, not fixed, not finished, but included. Jesus walks ahead again. You follow your steps more certain, not because the path is clear, but because you're no longer walking outside anything. You've been stitched into the holy, and the thread still holds. The thread settles in your pocket, close enough to touch, but gentle enough to forget until needed. You walk slowly again, each step deliberate, as if the ground itself is memorizing your rhythm. And then out of nowhere you sigh, not dramatically, not sorrowfully, just truthfully. A long, quiet exhale that leaves your body like an emotion you didn't have words for. Jesus hears it. Of course he does. He doesn't comment, but he does tilt his head slightly, like someone leaning closer to catch a melody they love. You know, he says softly, heaven keeps track of those. You glance over. Of sighs, he nods, every single one. You raise a skeptical brow. Even the ones that don't mean anything. He smiles gently, especially those. There's an obscure phrase buried in an old Aramaic psalm fragment, long since faded from public liturgy, which reads, "The sigh of the weary is a hymn in God's native tongue." You feel it now. How some sighs aren't escapes, they're summons, that breath you exhale when you shut the door at the end of a long day. The one that leaks out in traffic, or just before sleep, or when you're staring at nothing and remembering everything. That one you just let go. Jesus says, I heard it when you were 6. You sighed like that sitting on a swing, trying to understand why love sometimes leaves. You blink. You don't remember that. But your body does. He continues. And that one you gave last winter, holding your own silence like a cracked mug. Heaven gathered that one too. You chuckle under your breath. I never thought of sighs as sacred. Because you think only words matter, he says. But I listen to what the soul exhales when it runs out of sentences. You stop walking, and for the first time you let yourself sigh again on purpose. Long, warm, whole. Jesus smiles wider this time. That one just became a constellation. You laugh. What heaven uses some sighs to name stars. He says casually, as if he's talking about herbs in a garden. They burn quieter, but they guide longer. You're not sure whether to believe him. But then again, here disbelief is just wonder that hasn't stretched yet. The path ahead curves again. You follow, But now you walk differently, knowing that even the breath you lose without noticing becomes part of heaven's archive, not as evidence, as worship. The sky has deepened to a velvet blue, soaked with more stars than any earthly sky should be able to hold. They shine without performance, steady, soft, sovereign. You walk beneath them with your hands tucked into your pockets, brushing the thread between your fingers and remembering how your last sigh became something eternal. Then one star flickers, not a twinkle, a blink. You stop. Jesus stops too, though you don't think he was surprised. He tilts his chin upward with a faint smile, like he's greeting an old friend at the far end of the room. "That one saw you," he says. You squint. "Stars. See not with eyes." He replies, "With memory." There's a rare phrase in a hidden scroll passed between the mystics of Mount Athos. Each soul is born with a companion star, one that listens, holds, and blinks when their name is remembered in heaven. You stare again. The star blinks once more, slow and deliberate, as if winking just for you. "What did it remember?" you whisper. Jesus speaks without looking away. "The night you stayed awake trying to believe I hadn't left you." You look down quickly. The memory rushes in quiet, raw, unspoken. You had asked for a sign. You didn't get one. You fell asleep crying. But the star saw. It blinked then too. He adds, "Something inside you melts and reforms all at once, like wax that held an old shape too long." "Do all stars respond?" you ask. "No," he says. "Only the ones assigned to carry your unspoken ache." You watch it again. It doesn't blink now. It just stays steady, warm, attentive. It's not moving across the sky. It's keeping watch. You chuckle. "So I have a guardian constellation now. Not a constellation," Jesus says. "A witness." There's a long pause. The kind that doesn't feel like silence. It feels like reverence. You sit on a nearby stone head, tilted back, heart unexpectedly open. "What if I forget again?" you ask. "What if I fall asleep tonight, full of doubt?" Jesus sits beside you. "Then your star will blink again. Not because you asked, just because you matter." The breeze picks up slightly, brushing past your cheeks, like fingers flipping through the pages of a beloved book. You breathe out slowly, eyes locked on that tiny blinking friend in the sky. And for once, you don't feel small. You feel seen. Because now you know, even if you forget your own worth, even if your prayers fall short, even if all you can do is sigh, the sky will blink back, and heaven will still remember your name. The stone beneath you is smooth, cool, shaped by countless nights like this one. The star that blinked back fades into the crowd, overhead, content now, its small task fulfilled. Jesus remains seated beside you, his cloak spread behind him like a silent shoreline. Then the fire flickers again. You hadn't noticed it followed you here, but there it is, a smaller flame now, just a single coal's glow in a shallow pit of ash and holy memory. A thin wisp of smoke rises from it, delicate as a breath, and in the silence it curls first into nothing, then into something unmistakable, a shape, a loop, a line. You narrow your eyes, a letter, then another, and suddenly you see it, your name, spelled out in soft swirling smoke. Not printed, not declared, whispered. The letters don't linger long. They form, rise, and vanish like heaven speaking only once, because it knows your soul never forgets its own sound. Jesus watches you watching. You weren't meant to see it, he says, but you were meant to feel it. You don't speak, you just breathe. Slowly, as if trying not to shatter the holy air, Names are sacred. He continues. Yours has been spoken in rooms you've never entered. You glance at him. What does it mean? He shrugs. You'll learn that in pieces. Not because I'm hiding it. Because your soul isn't ready to carry it all at once. There's a quiet belief among early Aramaic poets that when a soul is born, God breathes its name into fire. And that fire somewhere somehow keeps burning until the soul returns. Not to remind God, but to remind you. You look again. The smoke has already moved on. No more letters, just gentle spirals dissolving into the sky. Will I see it again, you ask? No, Jesus says. But you'll recognize it in the pause before someone says something kind. In the wind before you pray. In the way your chest warms when no one else is around. You press a hand to your heart. It's beating the way names sound in heaven, slow, sure, and tender. I didn't know you remembered me this personally, you whisper. Jesus grins. Smoke doesn't waste itself on strangers. The embers glow brighter for a moment, then rest again. And though the smoke is gone, you still feel it like a song you only heard once, but could hum for the rest of your life. The night deepens. The stars lean in. Your soul stays named even in the silence. You walk once more quieter now. Not because the journey has tired you, but because wonder speaks softer the longer you listen. Jesus strolls beside you, hands folded behind his back, gaze lifted as though rereading something written in the stars. Then you see it, a wooden lectern worn smooth by age, and reverence standing alone in the middle of the path, like a teacher who waited centuries for one student. Upon it lies a scroll. Its parchment is thick, lined with the frayed edges of time, its ends rolled gently inward, like a breath held halfway. You approach. The script is unfamiliar, not Hebrew, not Greek, not Latin, and yet somehow legible, not with the mind, but with the spirit. Jesus gestures. Go on, read. You lean closer and let your eyes adjust. The first lines shimmer faintly with divine ink. In the hours between sorrow and sunrise, this one wandered. Your breath catches. It's you. The scroll is telling your story. But as your eyes follow the line, something odd appears: blank space. Lines with no writing. Whole portions missing. You look up. Is it unfinished? Jesus smiles gently. No, just unread. You frown. Unread by who? By you. There's a sacred wispy from the Dead Sea. Writings a teaching not taught, but passed like a secret. Between the scribes, God writes the parts of your life in invisible ink until your soul has wept enough to read them. You touch one of the blank spaces with your fingertips. It's warm, alive, waiting. What happened in this part, you ask? Jesus leans close. That's when you thought nothing mattered. Your chest tightens, and here you point further down. That's when you survived something you never gave yourself credit for. You close your eyes. The scroll pulses under your touch. This one, your voice falters, resting on the longest blank stretch. Jesus is quiet for a moment. That's when you were being carried. You open your eyes slowly. But why can't I see it all? Because peace, he says, isn't found in knowing the whole story. It's found in trusting that it's being written with love, even in the pages you can't read yet. You look down again. And this time the blank spaces don't feel like omissions. They feel like promises. You roll the scroll gently, closing it with reverence, and step back. What do I do with it, you ask? Jesus places his hand over your heart. You already carry the ink. You nod, trembling. Then speak not as a question, but as a vow. I'll keep reading. He smiles. and I'll keep writing. The scroll fades from the lectern, not vanishing, but folding itself back into time. The lectern remains waiting for the next moment. You're brave enough to believe that you're unwritten doesn't mean unloved. The lectern disappears into the mist as gently as it arrived, and the path continues forward, narrower now, lined with tall grasses that hush against your legs as you pass. Your fingers absent-mindedly touch your robe pocket, feeling the thread still tucked there, as if it anchors your place in this living scripture. Then something floats down, soft, weightless, a feather. It lands in front of you, spinning slowly in the air, like it's remembering how to fall. You crouch and pick it up. Pale gold, slightly curved, the kind of feather no bird on earth could carry without glowing. Jesus kneels beside you. That one's been looking for you. You blink. Me. He nods. Not all feathers fall randomly. Some are sent. You turn it gently in your hand. It's warm. Not like sunlight, more like memory. Holding it, you feel flashes childhood laughter, a song your grandmother used to hum that one moment when you stood in the rain and didn't feel alone. What is this, you ask? He leans in, his voice barely louder than the breeze. It's the part of your spirit that refused to forget wonder. You stare at it. I thought I lost that. You didn't, he says. It just hid. There's a whisper from the apocryphal Book of the Breathings that claims God gave every soul a feather before birth, not to fly with, but to remember. And if they ever forgot why they were born, the feather would find them again. Yours found you. You lift it slowly. It trembles in your grasp, not from fear, but from recognition. I used to believe in miracles, you whisper, in beauty, in things I couldn't explain. And then life taught you about gravity, Jesus says softly. But even gravity can't keep wonder from returning. You smile, tears rising gently like dawn behind your eyes. Can I keep it? He tilts his head. You already did. Every time you paused to watch light hit a leaf. Every time a lyric made your throat tighten. Every time you laughed while crying. That was the feather trying to speak. You hold it to your heart. It doesn't fix everything, but it reminds you that not everything needs fixing to be sacred. And for the first time in years, you don't feel foolish for still believing in beauty. The feather begins to hum in your palm, a tune older than words. It lifts slightly, not to fly away, but to settle inside you. And you realize it's not something you hold. It's something you are. The feather now rests just beneath your collarbone, weightless, but not idle, like a vow still echoing inside a sanctuary. You walk on the path growing dimmer, not from darkness, but from softness. The world feels muffled like snow without cold. Ahead, the glow of lanterns. Not oil-fed flames, but orbs of quiet light suspended midair, swaying gently as if giggling at their own grace. Jesus leads you to a stone amphitheater, nestled into the hillside, its steps cracked with age, its stage covered in wildflowers. The kind of place you'd expect children to act out parables with bed sheets and sandalwood props. Is this a theater, you ask? Jesus nods. A rehearsal hall. For what he smiles. The stories heaven meant to tell, but earth wasn't ready for. You sit beside him on the front step, and then they appear. A dozen or so figures step onto the stage, not fully solid, not fully light. Their faces shift like watercolor, their voices carry wind instead of breath. You know what they are before he says it. Angels. They begin to act awkwardly. One stumbles on a line, another drops a scroll. One forgets to lift their wings at the right moment and huffs dramatically like a middle schooler in sandals. You laugh. Jesus laughs louder. They tried to tell a story once of a shepherd who saw me before Bethlehem, but he froze, forgot every word. On stage, the angel sighs, shrugs, and waves sheepishly. There's a myth, Jesus adds, that some angels were so moved by human longing, they lost their lines trying to imitate it. You watch the performance continue, snippets of unscripted glory. A scene of a woman alone in a market who suddenly starts to sing. Unaware, an angel beside her joins in harmony. A boy running through wheat fields, trailed by invisible wings, whispering courage. A father falling asleep at a table, not knowing a heavenly host stood guard all night. These aren't in scripture, you murmur. No, he agrees. But they happened, just not cleanly. The angels kept forgetting how to be divine when near the ache of the human heart. You lean forward. So they failed. Jesus looks at you sideways. Do you call it failure when someone forgets perfection because they love too deeply? You sit back slowly, because maybe what you thought were divine mistakes were just holy interruptions. The show finishes awkwardly, hilariously. One angel bows in the wrong direction, another waves at a flower. You and Jesus applaud anyway. The sound echoes into the stars. Sometimes he says, even heaven forgets the script, just to stay present in your story. The angels vanish, but the laughter remains. And so does the feeling that maybe the most sacred moments are the ones where glory trips over love and chooses love. The amphitheater fades behind you as the stars brighten overhead, each one a quiet guardian in the night. The warmth from the feather near your chest remains, and your steps now carry a rhythm not of urgency, but of intimacy, like you're walking home through someone else's dream, and they don't mind. As you round a gentle bend in the path, you see it. A small lamp, sitting alone on a mossy pedestal. No flame, no wick, no oil, yet it glows. Faintly at first, like a breath gathering courage. Then more steadily, as if recognizing you, you move closer. Jesus is already beside it, watching your reaction with that same look he had when multiplying bread, not proud, not surprised, just quietly, joyful. This lamp doesn't burn, he says. It remembers. You tilt your head, remembers what hope he answers. You peer into its center. The glow swirls softly, almost like a heartbeat. And somehow you recognize it. Your nights of waiting. Your prayers half whispered into pillows. Your dreams buried in silence, but still breathing beneath the soil of time. This light, Jesus continues, is built from all the moments you chose to believe without evidence. There's a hidden verse in an apocryphal Syrian scroll, never canonized but cherished by early desert monks. Blessed are those whose light came not from fuel, but from faith that refused to darken. You reach out and hover your hand near the lamp. It hums, not like a machine, like a lullaby sung through light. I thought I lost that kind of hope, you whisper. Jesus kneels beside the pedestal. You didn't. You just forgot where you stored it. The lamp flickers, and in its swirl, you see flashes. You choosing kindness when no one noticed. You keeping your heart open after disappointment. You believing again after a long silence. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't viral. But it counted. All that time you say I didn't feel strong. He grins. That's why it shines. You sit beside the lamp now, both of you lit by its glow. Will it stay with me, you ask? No, Jesus says, because it already is you. You blink, He explains, the hope you thought you lost never left. It just became light. And sometimes light isn't something you carry. It's something you are. The lamp dims gently, not dying, but folding into your presence. You feel it settle inside your chest. No flame, no fuel. Just the soft, quiet glow of a soul that hoped through the dark and made it here. The path opens slowly into a wide clearing, moonlit and hushed. At first glance, you think it's a field, but then you realize it's a garden. Not pristine like Eden, more tender. The plants aren't uniform. Some grow sideways, some bend, some are scorched at the edges, yet every single one is blooming. Jesus slows his steps. This is your regret garden, he says. You stop cold. I have one of those, everyone does, he replies. But most never come visit. You take a tentative step forward. The soil beneath your feet is dark, rich, almost violet. In hue, earth made heavy by tears and time. The scent is unfamiliar, part myrrh, part lavender, part something unnameable that reminds you of late-night prayers spoken through clenched jaws. These plants, Jesus continues gesturing to the nearest row, grew from what you thought disqualified you. You kneel. A tall stem leans toward you, its petals deep, crimson edges curled like they wept and dried in the sun. This one you ask softly. He kneels beside you, the words you never took back, but wished you had. You move further. Another plant, a vine of golden tendrils, clinging delicately to a broken trellis. And this, the apology you meant to give, but didn't know how. You stand slowly, eyes wide. There's one bush in the corner. Withered, quiet, bare. You approach it. Jesus speaks gently. That's the decision you still haven't forgiven yourself for. You touch its twisted branch. Suddenly it shifts just slightly. One tiny leaf unfurls from the center. I didn't think anything good could grow from these, you whisper. There's a passage, he says, from a nearly lost Ethiopian text. God waters the fields of failure until they bloom with things we didn't know we needed. You turn to him, so none of this was wasted. He places his hand over yours. Not a single tear, not a single pause. Regret is sorrow's root. But in my hands, even root rot can bloom. The garden rustles gently as though it too is sighing in relief. You look around not with shame now, but with awe. Because somehow the very things you once buried in secrecy have grown into color. Why didn't I see this before, you ask? Because healing is quiet, he answers, and regret makes a poor tour guide. You take one last look before turning to walk on. But something inside you knows this garden will bloom again. Because grace doesn't replace what you lost. It grows something from it. You leave the garden, slowly brushing your fingertips along the last bloom, before stepping onto a quieter path, narrower and shadowed by trees whose branches seem to hush even the wind. Jesus walks ahead, his steps soft, as if remembering something fragile. Then he stops near a tree stump, sits down without ceremony, and pats the space beside him. You sit, leaning back, expecting more teaching. But he's quiet, really quiet, almost tired. Everything okay? You ask gently. He stretches his legs out in front of him, looking up at the branches. I'm just remembering the night I forgot to sleep. You wait. He doesn't explain right away. He breathes in, out. There was a night. He begins softly when I lay down under a fig tree near the Sea of Galilee. Long day of healing. Hungry crowd. Too many questions, not enough quiet. You listen, heart slowing to match his tone. I closed my eyes, he says, but the prayers were too loud. Prayers from the people. He nods, all over. They whispered them into pillows, into dirt, into nothing. He chuckles lightly. One child prayed for her father's anger to melt. One man asked for rain to hold off until the harvest. One widow just said, "Please, someone see me." You swallow. And I was tired. He continues. But I couldn't sleep, because their prayers had weight, and I didn't want any of them to fall. There's a fragile teaching passed in quiet among some ancient monks of Mount Sinai. The Lord has sleepless nights, not from power, but from love that refuses to rest, while one cry remains unanswered. You imagine him under the fig tree, eyes open to the stars, soul wide awake. Did you answer all of them, you ask? No, he says, but I held all of them. Some became miracles, some became memories, some became you. You glance at him. Me, he smiles gently. You're someone else's answered prayer. You sit with that, let it steep. You've always thought of prayer as outgoing, as need reaching upward. But now you feel it as something God holds in his hands, like fragile glass, light catching, weight bearing. And what about my prayers, you ask? He turns to you, serious now. I never sleep through yours. You exhale slowly. It's not the answer to every longing. It's not a yes to every request. But it's better. It's presence, attention. A savior with tired eyes who still listens through the night. You lie back on the stump, staring into the sky, where stars blink like candles someone forgot to blow out. And in the quiet, you feel it, even when the world shuts its eyes. Jesus doesn't. The stars above stretch wider, quieter now, like they're waiting for something that's already begun. You walk again slowly, your breath long and even. The path narrows into a stony alcove tucked behind the trees, almost hidden. Inside, a shelf of clay jars lines the wall, each sealed with wax and marked with symbols that look older than language. Jesus stands at the shelf, running his fingers lightly across the tops. These, he says, are the echoes people thought were lost. You step closer. Echoes. He nods. Words you spoke into emptiness. Moments you thought vanished. Tears cried into pillows and never caught. You reach toward a jar with a faint mark that strangely resembles your handwriting. Crooked, hurried, like someone trying not to feel too much. You lift it gently. It's warm. Not with heat, but with memory. Open it, Jesus says softly. You break the wax. The lid lifts, and inside, not dust, not air. A sound, your voice. You hear yourself faint, younger, shaking God. I don't know if you hear this, but I'm tired. I'm scared. I don't want to be alone anymore. It echoes through the jar like wind swirling through a canyon that has waited years to carry it home. You pull back. I don't even remember saying that. Jesus' eyes soften. But heaven did. There's a poetic line from a weathered desert fragment once sung by early Hebrew women during harvest. The Lord stores the echoes of those who whisper when no one else is near, and answers them in blooms or silence, whichever the soul needs first. You look along the shelf. Dozens more jars. All mine, you ask. Some, he nods. Some from others who whispered at the same moment you did. Sometimes echoes overlap. You look back into the jar. The sound fades. But in its place, warmth. Not the warmth of resolution, the warmth of being heard. You place the lid gently back. I didn't think any of it mattered. Every echo, he says, becomes part of the story. Even the unanswered ones are recorded. because I don't need a request to respond with love, I just need a voice. You run your hand along the row of jars. One of them hums softly like a seashell still holding a storm. It survived. Another pulses faintly, glowing, an echo still waiting. Will I ever hear them all, you ask? Jesus shrugs. Not here. But one day the jars will all open. And every cry you thought went nowhere will sing back. You exhale. It sounds like a prayer, but you don't try to name it. Because now you know, even the things you whispered and forgot, he didn't. The jars fade into the mist behind you, their whispers still echoing softly in your chest. You walk in silence, the kind that feels less like absence and more like reverence. The path winds upward now through low grasses and thorny bushes that part easily as Jesus leads the way. Then along the side of a stone wall, cracked and vine-covered, you see it. A shepherd's crook. Old, worn, wooden. But it glows faintly, not from magic, but memory. The kind of light that lingers around sacred tools long after their work is done. You stop. Is that yours? Jesus nods, but doesn't move to take it. It's been here a long time, he says. Sometimes I come back just to remember how many times I almost let go of it. You blink. You let go. He looks at you with tired kindness. Do you know how heavy it gets to carry the stories of people who don't want to be found yet? You step closer. The crook isn't polished or majestic. It's cracked in places. One side bears a deep scar, as if it had once blocked something sharp. Maybe a wolf. Maybe doubt. Why keep it, you ask? He smiles gently. Because I promised not to leave. And sometimes the crook reminded me of that, when even I felt the ache. There's a phrase rarely translated in the Targum traditions, spoken softly during shepherding rites. He who carries the crook is also carried by it. You run your fingers along the wood. It hums faintly, like it remembers every sheep it ever nudged back from the edge, every valley it passed through, every name whispered into the wind in hope. You glance sideways. Did you ever lose anyone? He answers slowly. No one who wanted to be found stayed lost. But yes, some walked away longer than my arms could reach, for a while. The crook pulses again, as if answering for him. It is not the tool of control. It is the symbol of persistence. This was never for discipline. Jesus says it was for drawing close, not forcing, just guiding. You step back, eyes wide, and you never gave up. He laughs, not once, though I nearly dropped it when you stopped believing you were worth finding. You look away, heart stinging, but he continues softer now. I didn't drop it, because I knew one day you'd let me walk beside you again. The crook rests where it always has not, as a weapon, but as a witness, to wandering, to returning. You want to take it to feel its weight, but Jesus gently stops you. It's not yours to carry, he says. You're the reason I carried it at all. You smile through misted eyes and walk on knowing now you were never out of reach, not even once. You descend into a small valley where moonlight slides down the hills like silver ribbon. There's a hush to the air so still you almost hesitate to speak, as if even your footsteps might disturb something sacred. Then you hear it, a stream, soft, flowing, alive. You follow the sound until you see it, a narrow ribbon of water, weaving through smooth stones, glinting like 1,000 quiet promises. But something is strange. The stream never loops, never eddies, never delays. It flows forward, only forward. Even the ripples seem to know where they're going. Jesus kneels by its edge and cups his hands into the water. He doesn't drink, just watches it run through his fingers like time. This is the stream. He says that never flows backwards. You sit beside him. Is that symbolic or literal? He chuckles. Both. You watch the water pass. It's not loud, not rushing, but it's steady like it trusts its own destination. There's an old midrash, Jesus says, that claims heaven built this stream to remind weary hearts that their story can't be reversed, only redeemed. You trail your hand through the water. It feels like every goodbye you ever whispered, every door you couldn't reopen, every moment you begged to redo. It's hard, you say, knowing I can't go back. He nods. But going back doesn't fix what going forward can heal. The stream curves gently, and you see glimmers in it, faint images. You standing at crossroads. You saying things you now wish you hadn't. You not knowing which way was grace. These were my worst moments, you whisper. Or Jesus says, your most unfinished ones. You look up. Redemption isn't about returning to the past. He continues. It's about taking it with you and letting it become something new. There's a forgotten line from a Syrian baptismal song. The river of God flows only forward, carrying the wounded to tomorrow's wholeness. You scoop the water in your hand. It shimmers, then vanishes into your skin. Not erased, transformed. Will I always feel behind, you ask? No, he says. One day you'll see how far you've come, and you'll stop calling it regret. You'll call it riverbed. You lie back beside the stream, listening to its eternal direction. It never stops, never loops, never demands that you go back. It invites you onward. And in that current there's freedom. You close your eyes. The water sings softly. You are still moving. You are not lost. The past is not your prison. It's your soil. The stream slips behind you, now still flowing toward tomorrows you can't see yet. The air grows cooler, and somewhere nearby crickets begin to hum, like monks reciting psalms in the dark. You rub your arms not from cold, but from some invisible ache pressing in. That quiet weight that always comes when the night gets honest. Then just ahead on a flat patch of moss, you see it. A blanket, folded neatly, soft as fog. It glows faintly blue and silver, like it was stitched with moonlight and the deep sighs of people trying to keep their faith warm. You crouch beside it. Jesus watches you, wordless, but close. You reach down and gently unfold it. It's heavier than it looks, not burdensome rich. And as you run your hands across its fibers, you notice something remarkable. There are names stitched into the threads. Yours is there. So are others. Each line is different, some faded, some bold, some looped like cursive hope, others jagged like questions written too late at night. What is this, you whisper? Jesus sits beside you and places a hand on the fabric. These are unanswered prayers. Your breath catches. All of them, he nods. The ones you thought went nowhere. The ones you whispered once and never dared speak again. The ones you don't remember praying, but I do. There's an ancient Babylonian Christian proverb, never canonized but whispered by desert mothers. What God does not answer, he folds into comfort. You lie back on the blanket. It wraps around you without effort, like it was waiting for the shape of your sorrow. Why weren't they answered, you ask? They were, Jesus replies, just not in the language you expected. You pull the blanket tighter. It smells faintly of lavender dust and tears that dried mid-prayer. I thought silence meant you didn't care. I know, he whispers, but silence is sometimes my gentlest wait. You glance up at him, a tear sliding down your cheek. It hurt. He nods, brushing your hair softly like a parent calming a child who finally stopped pretending to be okay. I didn't ask you not to hurt, he says. I asked you to trust that pain isn't the end of the conversation. You lie there in silence, the weight of every prayer you thought was ignored, now warming you like the truest embrace. Somewhere inside this weave is the night you begged not to be left, the morning you asked to be seen, the week you stopped asking altogether. All of it held, wrapped in something better than answers' presence. Memory, a savior who stitched silence into comfort. The blanket still cradles you as you rise, slowly folding it, once then again, placing it over your shoulder, like a mantle worn by someone who no longer fears the unknown. The path ahead is softer now, veiled in gentle mist. You step forward until the fog parts around a single tree standing in the center of a field. Its branches stretch upward like prayerful hands. Its bark is carved not by tools, but by time. Rings curl visibly, even from a distance, and at the heart of the trunk, where most trees would hold knots, this one bears a question. A single unpunctuated why. You hesitate. Jesus steps up beside you, silent. This tree, you begin, grew from a question you buried. He finishes. You trace the word in the wood. The why dips sharply like a soul bending in grief. The bark is warm beneath your hand. It's mine, it's ours, he says. You weren't the first to ask it. There's a forgotten fragment in the Gospel of the Desert Watchers, a lost text kept only in whispered memory. The Lord plants the unanswerable in holy soil, and it blooms not with solutions, but with shade. You sit beneath the tree, its leaves rustle without wind. I used to think asking why meant I lacked faith, you say. Jesus crouches beside you. No, it meant you trusted me enough to bring your ache to my feet instead of pretending it didn't exist. You lean back. The trunk curves around your shoulders like it was grown to cradle your question. Will I ever know the answer you ask? He smiles, tender and sad. You might. But not all answers bring peace. Some truths come only in whispers when peace has already arrived. The tree drops a single leaf into your lap. You pick it up. One side is gold, the other green life, and mystery folded together. You chuckle softly. It's strange. I thought this part of the journey would feel heavier. Jesus taps the tree. That's because you thought your question was a wound. But it was a seed. You look up. The branches sway full of blossoms shaped like tears, and stars fragile, sacred, unanswered, and still beautiful. So many questions, you murmur. He looks out over the field. More than this world has room to answer. And that's okay. He turns back to you. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have built the tree. You lie back again, letting the grass beneath your head hold you as the branches stretch overhead. And you realize you're not waiting for answers anymore. You're learning to rest in the asking. And that is holy too. The tree's shade lingers on your skin long after you leave it behind, as though your question still walks with you, but without urgency. Just presence. Up ahead, the path widens into a low hollow, cupped gently between two hills. There at the very center burns a campfire, but something about it stops you. There's no smoke, no crackling, no scent of wood or ash, only light. Soft and amber like memories, told gently by someone who loves you too much to rush. Jesus settles near it and motions for you to join. You do, knees bent, arms wrapped around your legs, the heat warm but not scalding, as though the fire knows it's bedtime. This fire, he says, doesn't burn what it touches. It remembers. You lean forward. Remembers what he gestures toward the center of the flame. Stories that weren't finished. You watch, and slowly within the fire's heart scenes shimmer into view, not full images, more like flickering silhouettes of things you once started but never finished. The poem you never dared share, the letter you never sent, the calling you felt then buried under doubt. These are mine, you whisper. He nods. They still live. There's a rare teaching in the scroll of the embers, long lost, but murmured among monastic candle makers. God collects abandoned callings and warms his children with the fire of what still waits to be. You stare into the flame, and it doesn't accuse, it doesn't pressure. It just holds space for what could be. I thought I failed you, murmur. Jesus pokes gently at the flame with a twig. You paused. That's not the same. But I never went back. Maybe you weren't meant to then. But you can now. Or not. This fire doesn't demand, it invites. The scenes shift, becoming gentler, softer. You see yourself trying something again. Not perfectly, but presently. The fire purrs low like a cat curling in a sunbeam. It's not wild, it's not dramatic, it's faithful. I don't want to forget these things again, you say, quietly. He smiles. Then let them become warmth, not pressure. You close your eyes, letting the heat press into your palms. Not burning, just reminding. I think I still want to write that letter, you whisper. Jesus says nothing, but the fire glows brighter. And that's his answer. Because sometimes the holiest yes doesn't come in thunder or wind. It comes in a fire that asks nothing of you, except to stay a while. The fire hums behind you now, a low memory wrapped in warmth. And you walk again, this time along a narrow ridge that tilts downward toward a field of dust. The wind here carries silence, the kind that wraps around your ankles and pulls you gently into remembrance. Jesus walks beside you, gaze tilted downward. This is where most people want to turn around, he says softly. You glance down and see them footprints, not your own. Dozens, hundreds, winding across the sand. But they're all facing the wrong direction, backward. Not like someone retreating, more like someone searching. Some sets circle themselves, some loop endlessly. Others vanish halfway mid-stride. What happened here, you ask? He exhales. This is the field where people tried to walk forward, while still facing what they lost. Your chest tightens. He continues. They kept hoping to make peace by rewinding, by staring at the door that closed, by memorizing the map of what might have been. You kneel to trace one footprint. It's deep, heavy, like the person carrying it was made of sorrow. There's an obscure scroll passed between early desert anchorites. Blessed are those who finally turn their face away from the echo, for their shadow will finally follow the sun. You look behind you instinctively. It's not just a poetic metaphor. You have walked backward before, remembering conversations you wish ended differently. Jobs that never became callings, friendships that froze in silence. I didn't know I was doing it, you admit. No one does, Jesus says, until they get tired of bumping into the past. You smirk. That tracks. Then you see something else, a single set of prints. They face forward. They walk cleanly directly through the field. Whose are those, you ask? Jesus shrugs. Someone who finally let go of needing the why before walking into the what now. You stare at the line of prints. They're not perfect. Some steps falter, a few drift, but they never turn around. You rise, breathe, and take one step facing forward. Harder than it looks, you admit. Jesus grins. That's why I offer to walk with you. Together your steps join the single line ahead, not forgetting the past, but no longer following it. You glance down. Your footprints now face the same direction as your hope. The wind softens as you leave the field of backwards footprints behind. The stars above have shifted too, no longer scattered randomly, but forming quiet patterns you can't quite name, like someone rearranged them gently while you weren't looking. Up ahead stands a tall frame, silver, unmoving. At first you think it's a mirror, but when you step closer you realize something odd. It doesn't reflect anything. Not your face, not Jesus, not the trees behind you, just stillness. I don't understand, you murmur. Is it broken? No, Jesus says gently. It's holy. You glance at him. This is the mirror that only shows what heaven sees. You furrow your brow, but I don't see anything. He nods. Exactly. You wait. Then quietly he continues. It won't show you what you see. Because your eyes are trained by scars, by past labels, by the way others described you in their own fear. You stare at the glass again. Nothing. There's a phrase in an old Coptic prayer scroll. Blessed is the soul who cannot see herself, for she may finally see as she is seen. You exhale slowly. So how do I know what it sees? Jesus steps closer, placing his hand lightly on the mirror's frame. You'll hear it. Not in words, in memory. And suddenly it starts. A warmth in your chest, the way a child once looked at you with trust. The time someone said, I feel safe when you're around. The moment you stood for someone you didn't have to stand for. The glass doesn't show your face. It reflects your impact, not measured in metrics or mirrors, but in meaning. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. You are not the summary of your failures. You are not the echo of someone else's disappointment. You are not the absence of perfection. You are the presence of grace. And grace doesn't always show up on the outside. I always wanted to see myself how you see me, you whisper. Jesus places a hand on your shoulder, then stop looking and start listening. You smile, eyes still closed, because the mirror may not show a reflection, but it has already shown you the truth. And that truth doesn't glare. It glows, like a name spoken only in heaven. The mirror fades behind you, dissolving not like glass, but like a memory that has served its full purpose. The path opens again, this time onto soft earth, blanketed by wildflowers and dew. You can feel it before you hear it music. Faint, familiar. You stop walking. It's not playing to you. It's playing through you. Soft notes rise and fall like a lullaby hummed from a distance, echoing inside bones you didn't know held melody. What is that, you ask? Voice hushed. Jesus closes his eyes. That's the song you knew before you were born. You blink. I had a song every soul does, he says. But life gets loud. Pain turns down the volume. Survival changes the rhythm. The sound grows clearer. No lyrics, just warmth. A stringed instrument you can't name with chords that sound like twilight and silence and the ache of hope returning home. There's a passage Jesus says from the hymn of the first breath, sung in heaven's earliest days. Each soul descends with a melody hidden in the marrow and rises again when it remembers how to sing it. You step forward, eyes wide, heart slowing to its true tempo. The music bends slightly as you move, almost as if the earth is tuning itself to your walk. Why did I forget this, you whisper? Because heartbreak distorts harmony. But the song never stopped playing. You just stopped thinking you deserved to hear it. You close your eyes, and in that instant you remember the way your spirit moved when you were little and unafraid. The hum that carried you through hospital rooms and lonely apartments. The rhythm of your footsteps when you helped a stranger and didn't tell anyone. That was all part of the music. I want to hear it always, you say, breath-catching. Jesus smiles. Then live in tune with it. Not perfectly, just presently. Every kind act, every honest laugh, every moment you choose softness when the world demands sharpness. That's how you sing. The music swells briefly, then folds into silence again. But now, you carry it, not as a song stuck in your head, but as a sacred soundtrack under your life. A melody no one else can write, but heaven will always recognize. The hush after the music lingers like incense, fragrant and invisible, clinging to your thoughts. The path narrows again, this time leading to a gate. Wrought iron, elegant, covered in vines and tiny white blossoms that glow faintly in the moonlight. It isn't tall, it isn't guarded, but still you hesitate. Jesus pauses beside you. You've been here before. You blink. I don't remember this. No, he says, but your heart does. You reach for the gate's latch. There's no keyhole, no chain, no resistance. It swings open with the ease of something that was never meant to stay shut. What is this place, you ask? He steps through first. This is the part of you that believed you weren't allowed to rest. You follow. Beyond the gate is not a garden or a throne room, but a field of soft moss-feathered grass and hammocks tied between trees whose branches hum with stillness. Everything here feels undone, not incomplete, unpressured. There's a phrase in the Lost Shepherd's Psalter. Blessed is the one who walks through the door that was never locked, but feared to knock. You sit on the moss. Your body exhales before your mind can catch up. You didn't even know how tight you'd been holding yourself. I always thought rest was something I had to earn, you admit. Jesus lies back beside you, arms folded behind his head. And I always hoped you'd stop believing that. You lie down, staring up through the branches. I felt guilty, you whisper, for resting, for being still, like I was wasting something. You weren't wasting, he says. You were healing. The stars blink overhead. The grass cradles your form. And that inner tension, the one that usually whispers you're falling behind, that you're not doing enough, that if you pause you'll disappear, it begins to melt. You know, you say slowly, this doesn't feel like giving up. Jesus grins, because it's not. It's giving in to peace, to presence, to me. You close your eyes. Somewhere nearby, a leaf falls with the gentlest thud, like even the trees are learning to let go. You smile faintly. I don't ever want to leave. You don't have to, he replies. You carry the gate now. Anywhere you go, you can open it again. You open your eyes and look at your hands. No key, no symbol. Just the awareness that rest is not earned, it's allowed. And tonight, you are finally letting yourself be allowed. You linger in the moss a little longer, feeling your limbs finally release the invisible armor they've worn for too many years. Then slowly, gently you rise. The field ahead is darker now, not ominous, just quieter. Like a library where every book is a soul, and each page asks to be turned softly. In the middle of the path stands a small table. Upon it a single unlit candle. Beside it nothing. No match, no lighter, no sunbeam conveniently breaking through the clouds. Just the candle, And your breath. Jesus stands beside it. His voice barely a whisper. This one lights only when you believe your breath carries holiness. You blink. What does that mean? He motions gently. Try. You step forward a little unsure. The wick is dry. It shouldn't respond. But you exhale. Softly. Not a huff. Not a blow. A breath. And the candle flickers to life. A flame dances there, small and steady, as if you had whispered something sacred, and fire answered back. There's a forgotten saying in the Dead Sea caves, Jesus murmurs. The breath of the broken is holy, for it rises with nothing to prove. You stare at the flame. How is it? Burning. Because belief, he says, isn't proven by volume. It's ignited by intention. You sit beside the table. The candle glows with a warmth that doesn't demand attention. It simply is. A reminder of every time you breathed through anxiety, of every time you sighed into a pillow rather than scream, of every morning you got up and tried again, even when no one saw. Most people don't think their breath matters, Jesus says. But it's the first thing I ever gave humanity. And it's the one thing you always carry. You lean in. The flame pulses. I used to think I needed loud faith, you whisper. Big declarations, perfect prayers. He smiles. But heaven hears your inhale before you even form a word. The flame flutters slightly as if nodding. You cup your hands around it, not to contain it, but to honor it. And suddenly you understand, this is why you're still here. Not because you shouted, not because you had the right answers, but because you kept breathing. And with each breath you proved to heaven that you hadn't given up, even when it felt like you had. You exhale once more. The candle glows brighter, and in its light you feel it. Your breath is not just survival, it's worship. The candle's glow fades slowly behind you as you continue along the path, warmed by something you no longer feel the need to explain. The trees begin to thin the night, deepening like velvet, and ahead you see it simple and tall. A door, wooden, unpainted, no handle, no inscription. It stands upright in the middle of a clearing with no wall around it, just waiting. Jesus stops a few steps behind you. You approach cautiously. It doesn't open. He nods, not with hands. You glance over your shoulder. Then how? With voice, he says, but not your strongest one. You frown slightly. Then, which? He smiles gently, the one you've tried to hide the longest. You stand before the door uncertain. Then you remember a line from the Whispers of Elijah, a little-known text buried in the margins of a Nazarite commentary. The gate that opens to glory hears the voice you used when no one else was listening. Your throat tightens. You close your eyes, and you speak not loud, not confident, but real. I'm tired. There's a creak. I want to be loved without explaining myself. The door shudders. I don't know if I'm good enough, but I want to be known anyway. A click, and the door begins to open. Not quickly, not theatrically, just faithfully. Like it's been waiting not for you to prove yourself, but to show yourself. You step through. The air on the other side is different. It smells like old parchment and rain on dry earth. It feels like honesty. It sounds like silence that doesn't need to be filled. Jesus steps through behind you. You turn to him. So many doors in life required me to perform. He nods. This one waited for you to be true. You glance back. The door is still there. But it no longer looks imposing. It looks like invitation. Will it close behind me, you ask? No. He replies, it stays open. for the next time your voice forgets how holy it is. You stand in this new space, not entirely sure what comes next, but now you know your voice, especially the uncertain one, isn't something you have to fix before you use it. It's the key, and heaven listens not for volume, but for truth. Beyond the door you find not another path, but a room, soft, round, timeless. The walls are made of something that looks like stone and light mixed together, solid enough to hold you, soft enough to breathe with you. There are no clocks here, no calendars, no windows revealing where the moon sits or how long you've wandered. It feels outside of time. Jesus steps beside you barefoot, as if even his steps must not disturb the stillness. This, he says gently, is where time lets go. You look around. What does that mean? He gestures to the center of the room, where a single table rests. Upon it, a cracked hourglass, a melted candle, and a sundial that spins slowly, even in the absence of light. There are moments, Jesus says, that refuse to be measured, because healing doesn't keep a schedule. You sit beside the table. The air feels like lullabies spoken in your mother's voice before she forgot the words. It smells like old books and new rain. I've wasted a lot of time, you murmur. He tilts his head. Or maybe you waited for it to be sacred. There's a phrase whispered in the ruins of an old Armenian abbey. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but love can pull the clock's hands from the wall. You touch the cracked hourglass. The sand inside hasn't stopped flowing, but it moves differently, as if each grain waits until you're ready. I thought I should be further along, you whisper. Jesus sits across from you, not correcting, just present. Who told you further was better than still here? You smile faintly. That's fair. You lean into the silence. And in that pause you realize your soul doesn't need to be rushed. Your grief doesn't have to meet a deadline. Your growth isn't late. It's alive. You rise slowly and walk the room's edge. In one corner, a tapestry hangs. Woven into it are dates you recognize, the one you felt most alone, the one you almost gave up, the one you chose hope anyway. I thought those were wasted days, you say. Jesus stands beside you, looking at the same fabric. They were actually the ones that counted most. You nod, swallowing something sacred. Because maybe heaven never asked for your timeline, just your trust. And here in this room, where time took off its watch, you finally exhale the pressure to be anywhere else but now. As you step out of the timeless room, something about your pace changes. It's slower, not from weariness, but from reverence. Like the earth beneath your feet deserves silence. The path curls inward, now forming a soft spiral leading to a pedestal carved from alabaster. Upon it rests a scroll, unfurled, yet still growing, as if the parchment itself is waiting for your next breath. You approach it gently. The ink is faint gold, the writing familiar. It's my handwriting, you whisper. Jesus smiles, standing just behind your shoulder. It is. You look again. Each line begins with a moment you remember, then becomes something else entirely. Not what happened, but what heaven saw in it. Your breakdown. Heaven recorded it as a turning point in courage. That unanswered text. Heaven called it an act of healthy boundaries. Your year of silence, a Sabbath in disguise. There's a teaching buried in the writings of the cave-dwelling mystics of Petra. The scroll of your life is not written by ink alone, but by the eyes of God, reading your unseen moments aloud into eternity. You turn to Jesus. But But I didn't write these interpretations. He nods. Because this scroll writes itself when your soul finally sees the meaning underneath the moment. You run your hand along the parchment. It's soft like worn cloth. Some sections are smudged. You pause. These were my mistakes, you murmur. Jesus leans closer. Look again. You squint. The smudges aren't errors. They're fingerprints, as if someone held your words, wept over them, and chose to preserve them not in shame, but in love. You blink hard. Why would you keep everything he breathes deep? Because nothing is wasted when it's woven with grace. Even silence becomes syllables when you're loved completely. You find the newest line. It's blank, and it's waiting for you. What do I write next, you ask? He shrugs. Whatever comes from truth, that's the only ink that doesn't fade. You stare at the space. Your hands don't shake this time. Because you finally know. Your story was never about perfection. It was about presence. And the courage to let the sacred scribes of heaven finish sentences you once wrote in pain. You step back from the scroll. It does not close. It continues. Because so do you. As you leave the pedestal and the living scroll behind, the air shifts again. A breeze moves through the trees, like a sigh from the pages of someone else's prayer. You follow it to a low bench, carved from olive wood, smoothed by time and countless visitors. There, draped gently across the bench, is a cloak, not bright or regal soft. Frayed at the corners, patchwork by design, not accident. It's stitched from dozens of fabrics, linen, wool, silks, even rough burlap in places. And as you approach, something stirs inside you. I know this, you whisper. Jesus nods. You've worn it before, in ways you never noticed. You run your hands over the fabric. Each square tells a story. Woven into the threads are symbols, initials, even faint ghost-like phrases. A grandmother's whispered blessing. A stranger's prayer after seeing you cry. A friend's faith spoken when you had none left of your own. There's a line Jesus says in the oral tradition of the Syrian candle-bearers. When your light fades, wrap yourself in the warmth of someone else's flame. You lift the cloak. It's not heavy, but it's anchoring. You drape it over your shoulders, and something shifts. The doubt doesn't disappear, but it quiets, like it knows it's not the only voice anymore. These are the moments others carried you, he says. When your prayers were fragments, and theirs filled the gap. You glance down. One corner is newer, less worn. It bears a name you almost forgot, someone who once prayed for you in secret, someone you thought didn't care anymore. Their square is here. How do you keep track of all this, you ask? He smiles gently. I never lose what's stitched in love. You close your eyes, sinking into the warmth of shared belief. Even when you felt invisible, someone saw you. Even when you thought your failure was final, someone prayed otherwise. Even when you forgot how to ask, someone remembered your name. The cloak rustles faintly, a lullaby of memory and mercy. You sit there for a long while, wrapped not in accomplishment, but in belonging. Because you were never meant to carry your faith alone. And every time you stumbled, someone's whispered, God, please help them, became your lifeline. You open your eyes. Can I take this with me, you ask? Jesus leans close. You already are. The cloak still drapes around your shoulders, warming you, not just with fabric, but with memory. You walk gently now, each step softened by the growing hush in the air. It's the kind of quiet that always comes before something sacred is spoken. Up ahead, A grove of cypress trees forms a circle. At its center, a single stone seat faces an invisible choir. Jesus pauses before entering. This is the place where your name was first sung. You look at him. Before I was born, he nods. Before the world was formed. You step forward slowly. The trees seem to part for you, bending slightly, their branches moving, like the gentle arms of an ancient host. The air hums. It's not a sound you hear with your ears, but with something deeper, your ribs, your breath, your memory. What is that, you ask? Jesus smiles. Listen closely. You close your eyes, and you hear it. A melody with no language, a harmony made not of words, but intention. Soft voices singing a name over and over again. Yours, not the version people gave you, not the one shortened, corrected, mispronounced, but the original sound, the one heaven gave when it imagined you into being. There's a verse in the scroll of first sound, preserved only in fragments. Before breath met lungs, the name singer sang you true. You kneel. The sound doesn't demand anything from you. It celebrates you, not for your accomplishments, not for your knowledge, but for your being. I didn't know you whisper that heaven sang. Jesus sits beside you. Every soul has a song. Yours is sung when you doubt yourself the most. You press a hand to your chest. The melody wraps around you like wind scented with myrrh and olive oil. It doesn't rise, it doesn't fade, it just continues. And what if I forget it again, you ask? He smiles. Then come back here, or anywhere quiet, and listen. The voices never stop. Even when you hated yourself, even when you wished you could disappear, even when you doubted God was near, they sang. They sang because you existed. And to heaven, that was always enough to deserve a song. You lie back on the stone seat, eyes closed. Your name, cradled in harmony, not to wake you, but to carry you toward sleep. You linger in the grove until the last gentle echoes of your name dissolve into the wind like breath into glass. When you rise, the path winds once more, not forward, not back, but inward, into a garden. At first glance, it's quiet, unassuming. No roses, no fountains, no bright blooming spectacle, just dirt, vines, a few wilted petals, a scattering of unopened buds that seem undecided. This feels unfinished, you murmur. Jesus stands beside you, hands folded gently. It is he says, and that's holy too. You step into the space. Soft soil cradles your footsteps. The air is damp with expectancy. You kneel by a small patch of bare earth. Nothing's growing here. He crouches beside you. That's okay. There's a line in an old Galilean orchard hymn. Blessed are the gardens where rest is sown beside seed. You trail your fingers through the soil. It's not lifeless, just unhurried. I thought gardens were supposed to bloom, you whisper. Jesus gently turns the dirt over with his hand. Only when it's time. And not every seed was planted for show. Some are here just to remind you that being held by soil is part of the story too. You sit back looking around. Not everything here will grow. Not everything is lush. But somehow it all feels safe. This doesn't look like abundance, you say quietly. He smiles, because you still think abundance means visible. A small bud near your knee quivers, not opening, not rushing, just existing, waiting. I always rushed through seasons like this, you admit. Felt guilty when I wasn't producing something. I know, he replies. But sometimes heaven celebrates what you refuse to force. You exhale deeply. For the first time, dirt beneath your nails doesn't feel like failure. It feels like Sabbath, like stillness counted. You lie back, eyes toward the branches above. A few leaves fall withered, brown, slow. And even that feels allowed. There's no pressure here to bloom. No calendar nailed to your chest. No divine stopwatch counting down your usefulness. Just presence. And the invitation to let stillness be fertile. You close your eyes. And in that pause you realize you don't have to bloom to be loved. You just have to be. From the quiet soil of the garden you rise your feet, now carrying something gentler, like the memory of mercy held in your souls. You walk beneath low branches that sway without wind until you find it tucked beneath an ancient fig tree. A bench. Simple. Worn, smooth, etched with the impressions of laughter. Jesus gestures for you to sit. This, he says with a soft smile, is the bench of forgotten joys. You blink. Forgotten. He nods, the ones you were too busy to notice, the ones that happened while your heart was looking elsewhere. You sit, and the moment you do, they return, not as memories, but as feelings. The way your chest lifted during that one song you couldn't stop humming. The burst of warmth when someone brought you soup without asking. That time a bird landed near you and stayed longer than birds usually do. Small, sacred, unclaimed. They were real, you ask, stunned by their clarity. They were joy, he says. Not happiness, not dopamine, just joy, quiet, unnoticed, yet never lost. There's a line in the book of the unmeasured, a scroll only sung, never written. God counts what you forget to thank him for, and keeps it safe until you sit still enough to receive it. You lean back. The bench creaks, not from weight, but from memory. And suddenly more return. The smell of old pages in a library you once wandered. The taste of bread when your soul was starving for comfort. A child's laugh drifting through a window when you thought all was lost. Why do we forget these things, you whisper? Jesus watches the fig leaves tremble, because joy doesn't shout, and the world rewards volume. You close your eyes. The sun has begun to rise somewhere beyond the mist, casting soft amber through the branches. I miss them, you say. He turns to you. They never left. They were just waiting for you to slow down. You sit in silence, and as the warmth curls through your fingers, one more joy arrives. This one, right now. This breath, this stillness, this shared presence with the one who remembers everything you didn't. You smile, not wide, but true. And that too is joy. You rise slowly from the bench, your body lighter not from effort, but from having finally remembered what had always been yours. The path narrows once more, and the sky above softens into hues of pearl and lavender. Morning is near. Then on a smooth stone pedestal up ahead, you see it, a single feather. White, slightly curved, almost glowing with some kind of memory. You approach it with reverence. It doesn't belong to any bird you've known. Its edges shimmer like the border between heaven and air. Jesus stands beside you but doesn't speak. You reach for the feather. It weighs nothing. And yet when you hold it, you feel everything. The weight of grief, of fear, of nights you prayed without words, of mornings you forced yourself to rise when your soul stayed curled under the blankets. This feather, Jesus finally says, carried what you thought you had to hold alone. You blink, startled. But I didn't give this to anyone. He smiles. And yet it was taken. You frown, confused. Then remember, that day you wept in silence in your car and suddenly felt calmer for no reason. That afternoon when you sighed and the breeze seemed to answer. That moment someone texted, You okay? Before you could say, I'm not. There's an old line buried in the tears of the turtle dove, a scroll so delicate it's kept only in breath. The weight you whisper into the void is caught by wings unseen. You lift the feather. It pulses in your hand softly, like a heartbeat, not your own. Who caught it, you ask? Jesus' eyes shine gently. Sometimes angels, sometimes intercessors, sometimes me. You run your thumb along its edge. Why don't we feel it leave? Because your soul is used to burden. Lightness feels foreign at first. You chuckle, faintly sad and amused. We really do cling to what exhausts us. You do, he says, because you think it proves your strength. You look down again. The feather has changed. It's now translucent, barely there. And yet you know it still holds every tear you didn't have the language to explain. You set it back on the pedestal. It remains, not waiting to be picked up again, just witnessing that it was once needed. Will someone else find it, you ask? He nods. Maybe. And when they do, it will carry their heaviness too. You close your eyes and whisper one last ache into the air. The feather flickers, then steadies, and you walk on lighter. The trail ahead glistens faintly now, lit not by torches or stars, but by something internal, like your own soul has begun glowing in quiet agreement with the path. The trees part once more, giving way to a stone circle nestled in a shallow grove. At its center is a well, not deep, not dry. Still, its waters are dark and glossy, reflecting no stars, no sky, only the face of whoever dares to peer in. You approach carefully. Jesus slows beside you. This is the well that only shows what you're ready to see. You lean over the edge. At first nothing, just your own unsure eyes. Then, ripples. Soft, gentle, silent visions flicker beneath the surface. Not clear outcomes, not lottery numbers or career blueprints, but moments. You see yourself older, laughing in a chair beneath a tree you haven't yet planted. You see someone holding your hand, whose name you don't yet know. You see yourself weeping, but not breaking, surrounded by peace that makes no earthly sense. You gasp, startled. It's not prophecy, Jesus says gently. It's possibility. You watch the images swirl again, softer now. There's an old mystic tradition among the Ethiopian night watchers. The future is not given. It is invited by the posture of peace. You glance up at him. So this isn't guaranteed, he shakes his head. It's the fruit of choices made in trust, in rest, in love. The well never manipulates. It mirrors. You sit by the edge, feet dangling into the lightless water. A single droplet rises up, yes up, and lands on your hand. It's warm. I was always afraid of what's ahead, you admit. I tried to control it, predict it, outthink it. He smiles. You've never needed a forecast, just faith enough for the next breath. The image is slow. The water goes still. You no longer need to see. Because you believe, not in perfect outcomes, but in perfect presence, no matter what comes. You rise, and the well remains. Not a map, not a mirror, but a quiet invitation to trust the unfolding. Because the future is not something you conquer, it's something you enter. You leave the well behind with a softness in your chest, not because it promised you certainty, but because it didn't. And still you walked. The grove gives way to a colonnade of ancient marble pillars. They rise like still voices, their tops veiled by ivy and morning mist. Between them, a building emerges, quiet domed, glowing with golden candlelight from within. You push the door open. A hush greets you, not silence but reverence. It's a library, Rows upon rows of shelves, scrolls, books, parchments, even scraps of cloth, and folded leaves all carefully placed. Each one carries a title, not in ink, but in intention. You step inside, running your fingers along a row. One scroll is labeled not with words, but a sensation. That time your heart asked for help when your mouth stayed silent. Jesus joins you by the shelves. This, he whispers, is the library of unspoken prayers. You look up sharply. I didn't know those were kept. He smiles. Every ache you never said aloud. Every longing you thought was too silly, too small, too late, they're all here. Not lost, not dismissed, cataloged by compassion. You pull a small book from the shelf. It's stitched together with frayed thread. The pages are filled not with sentences, but with warmth. Holding it, you feel the prayer you once made after everyone else went to bed. The one where you didn't have the words, only tears. It felt like it disappeared, you whisper. He places his hand gently on the cover. It didn't. It was delivered. There's a passage kept only in the margins of the lamentation psalms of the wind resters. The soul speaks even when the lips cannot. Heaven listens between the sighs. You walk the aisles. Each book is a story you didn't think heaven had time for. The longing to belong. The prayer for someone else to heal, even though you were breaking. The quiet hope that maybe joy would find its way back to you. Do you read them, you ask? Every day he answers, and not just me. Angels read them aloud in the night, so even the stars remember you are still speaking. You pause. What happens to them, you ask? The ones that were never answered. He smiles sadly. Some are answered in ways you didn't recognize. Some are still unfolding. And some become answers for others. You close the book gently, and for the first time, you don't feel foolish for what you once prayed in a whisper. You feel heard, because even in silence, heaven was listening. From the library's golden hush, you step into a hall that grows quieter still, until even your breath feels like a guest. The stone beneath your feet gives way to soft earth once more, and the passage narrows into a single archway framed with olive branches and tear-shaped beads of glass that catch the growing light. Jesus does not lead this time. He waits, allows you to open the final door. It's simple, carved wood, no latch, no lock. You push it gently. Inside is a room the size of a quiet heart. No scrolls, no visions, no flame or altar, just a single chair and someone sitting in it. He does not rise, he does not speak, he simply smiles. And you know, this is the place where God waited for you, not as judge, not as king, as father, as friend, as someone who loves you so much he refused to barge in even when you locked the door. There's a secret teaching whispered in the hidden notes of David's harp. He who made the door also made himself small enough to sit outside it forever. You step forward slowly. Tears rise not in sorrow, but in recognition. Because you remember now, the moment you almost called out. The night you felt him near but didn't dare speak. The fear that if you let him in, you'd be undone. And here he is, still waiting, not impatient, not wounded, just present. You sit across from him, not as a sinner before judgment, but as a child who finally came home. I thought, you gave up on me, you whisper. He shakes his head, smile deepening. I gave you space, that's not the same. You bow your head, I didn't think I was worth waiting for. His eyes shimmer with warmth. I wait, because you are. Not because you earn it. Because I chose you before time noticed you. Silence fills the room, but it is not empty. It is sacred. He doesn't demand a prayer, doesn't hand you a task, doesn't recite the ways you failed. He simply enjoys your nearness, as if your presence is the worship he's longed for most. You close your eyes, no music, no miracles, just the deep, quiet truth you were never alone. He never left the doorstep of your soul. And tonight, you finally opened the door, not because you were ready, but because he never stopped waiting. The room fades gently, walls dissolving like the edges of a dream, remembered with gratitude. Now you find yourself standing again beneath the stars in a clearing that seems woven entirely of starlight and silence. Your breath deepens, guided by peace rather than effort. Jesus is still beside you, not preaching, not healing, just there. Above the stars shine unhurried, soft, eternal. They never rush, never compete for brilliance, just exist steady, calm. These Jesus whispers looking up were here the night you cried, the night you laughed, the night you wondered if you could keep going. You exhale slowly. He continues softly. They never hurry, because they trust their place. You sit down on soft grass. The night cradles you like arms that learned your name before you did. There's a verse spoken only by shepherds resting near Bethlehem fields. The stars keep vigil, so we can stop counting time and trust instead the rhythm of the one who holds eternity. Your eyelids grow heavier now, comforted by the gentle whisper of leaves, the hush of the world breathing in unison, and the warmth of the cloak still draped over your shoulders. I think I understand peace now, you say softly. Jesus smiles quietly. It's always been yours. Your heart rate slows. Sleep edges closer, not forced, not fearful, but invited, welcomed. The scrolls, the gardens, the tears, the whispers, they haven't vanished. They've simply been folded gently into who you are tonight. You'll stay, you murmur. Always, he replies. And slowly the lines blur between awake and asleep journey, and rest, prayer, and peace. You lie back beneath the stars. The world around you grows softer. Your breaths lengthen. The night no longer asks anything from you. It only offers itself as a lullaby that never leaves. Because tonight, beneath stars that never hurry, you have finally found the stillness your soul was born for. Sleep well, friend. You're held. End of script. Sweet dreams.